There we go. Gather around, freaks. It's time again. It's that time during the week where you gather around the internet fireplace and turn on your internet radio, tune the dial to Hey, Did You See This One? And find out that it's in fact Jason's birthday month, and we're going to wrestle with more morality and mortality. It's Hey. Did you see this one?
Gather round, freaks, because it's that time of year again. The time of year that one of your hosts subjects you to something guaranteed to bend your mind, body, and soul. It is with great pleasure that we extend to you an invitation to delve into the realms of extreme sports and theatrical magnificence. Prepare yourselves for an experience like no other, as Hey, Did You See This One? And Jason R. Phillips proudly presents Wrestling with Mortality!
Let me tell you something, brother. It's that time of the month. Wait.
Is this what you were meant to do at the beginning? Or?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. It's that time of the week again, brother, dude. And this week, we're talking about professional wrestling. It's my birthday, dude. And it's professional wrestling month. And it's wrestling with morality and mortality, brother. I know I keep saying morality and mortality, but I keep getting those words mixed up.
Are you wrestling with morality right now?
I'm a little bit wrestling with morality. This is, of course, brother. I hated to see this one, Jack. And we're talking about wrestling movies this month. And this is episode 100. Let me see if I can quickly find out what episode this is, because it's getting out of control. Okay. This is officially episode 130 of Hey, Did You See This One? And it is season 2, episode 30. We've done it. We've gotten to 130 episodes of whatever in the fuck this is. It is. Oh, thank you. I suppose it is a movie reaction review roundtable show. I think I've included all of the things that we have.
Oh, I forgot that it's on loop. Whoopsies. Sorry.
We should just leave that on loop through the whole thing, so it's like we have a crowd. We're already getting goofy and we're already getting silly. I've lost my podcast layout, so you know it's going good. I would like to introduce myself, Jason R. Phillips. My co-host, as always, is Stephen R. Robertson Waters. Stephen Robertson Waters.
That's me.
I will figure. I'm just going to
M. Waters.
Oh yeah, I know that. Michael. Did I get it finally? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, that was.
No, it's
Miguel.
Stephen Mussolini Waters.
Miscellaneous Waters. Miscellaneous. And of course, returning to the show for, I believe, the 6th time is Tim Covey. Tim Covey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
Your DNA is splattered all over the face.
Like a murder scene.
This one.
Jeez.
I have wrestling shirts for each episode of this month. It is my birthday month, and we're talking wrestling movies. They decrease in quality. This one probably the best, and the last one is a really bad documentary I found on YouTube, mockumentary, but I just want to watch it and see what it is. That's a little spoiler for you people playing at home. And speaking of playing at home, we have a little game we play each and every week called Correct Movie Guesses.
Congratulations! You have successfully guessed the correct answer, which is the answer you provided. Congratulations!
The rules are simple. On Monday and Tuesday, I usually post a portion of the poster for the movie we're doing that week, and I slowly zoom out between the 2 days and have people guess. This was one of those weeks where like there's not much on the poster and pretty much everything gives it away. I did my best. I'll tell you, I got more on the first day than I did the second because everybody who knew what it was just knew it right away. But I actually have a lot to get through, so I'm going to get right into it. Holdover from last week. Ben Mason did get last week's episode, and I wanted to just give him a shout out because they've been doing very well lately on the BS Bargain Bin podcast. Need more B-movie schlock in your life? Join Ben and Sandra on the BS Bargain Bin podcast every Monday. Next week's episode, I believe now last week's episode, the boys cover 80s classic with a question mark. Is it a classic? Earth Girls Are Easy. And I believe they're looking for more selections for throughout the year for fan picks. So go over and check them out. You can find them pretty much everywhere, just like us. A friend of mine, Chris Davies, he got it right. He said, buy more physical media and support your local cinema. It's pretty good. Nicholas Latimer, he just wanted to say world peace. Movies by Doug. He's gotten the question right before. We've talked about his podcast a little bit on the show. He wanted to say, check out my latest review covering There Will Be Blood on all major audio platforms and YouTube. Noel got it.
He reviews good movies on his podcast?
Yep. He reviews movies that people actually have seen. I guess this is, we have that 1 month where we did those 4 modern movies from like 2022. And then this one. And then everything else is ancient or bad or stupid or in between. Maybe not. I don't know. Noel, friend of the show, former guest of the show, got it right. And they wanted the satisfaction of just getting it right. But I said, no, I'm going to give your podcast a shout out. The Stick Taps and Stitches podcast, which is a hockey podcast. I think they do a couple shows a week or something. Maybe just one show a week. They cover all sorts of stuff on that. So, hey, Drubel, how's it going?
Hey, he's my friend from Texas.
That's amazing. I'm just letting his. Thank you, Drubel. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that. Let's see. B. Dolly was on the show a few weeks ago for Seed of Chucky. She wanted to say. I asked her what she wanted to say, and she said, again, just the satisfaction of being correct. Ouch, there was a Ghost podcast. Shout out to them. Ghost podcast, not really much more to say, but they wanted a shout out. Also, Brenton Brown, friend of mine from like high school era, also just said no message, just like to be right.
Maybe you don't read those ones.
Yeah, but I like it because it's funny because people are just like, I just wanted to be right on your internet podcast show.
How modest of them.
Yeah.
The rapper Black Rook, also his name is Kyle IRL. He got it correct. Gordon McDonald, who always gets it right and then just comments nonsense that I have to edit. This time I didn't have to edit anything. He just said claw iron the. So useful.
Someone decode that message for us.
Yeah, can we figure it out? And then Chris Murphy of the Hold Up podcast and part of the United Federation podcast, which we are proudly a part of, got it correct. And he said, I'll get you next time, Gadget, next time, which also kind of a reference.
I mean, to be fair, your second clue was just Zac Efron with no shirt on holding a wrestling belt. So I don't know if that really, like, you made it too difficult this week.
It's funny.
They're doing a high school musical?
Yeah. I did also see.
Why does he look like he's a statue carved out of caramel?
I did also see on your, like I just saw earlier today that you commented on one of the TikToks and you were like, you call that a hint?
What the hell is wrong with you?
You might be dumb, buddy. Yes, but that is, of course, the Correct Movie Guest game. Thank you for everybody who participated this week. I appreciate you. I do want to just on that note, the call to action portion. I got to do business. Please subscribe to us on all social media. Find us on YouTube, Twitch. We are on X, Twitter. We are on everything, but I really only used Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook right now because that's where I have the most like built-in following. So our message gets out a lot faster there. It's hard to like get momentum on sites like Threads or Twitter because you have to like really just be on those platforms around the clock.
Mhm.
And also shout out, we only used him for a moment this week, but Wipeout Audio, who we use for pre-show every week. Thanks to him. Please go and find him on YouTube and, do the thing, brother. Jack. The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior's laugh, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's everything for house cleaning. I got it all done in 15 minutes this week. It's not half past. I think if that's everything, we can go on to our brief history.
A brief history.
This is, of course, the segment of the show where we just sort of talk about our history with the show. The three of us are pretty much going to have all the same one, but
Oh yeah, I forgot we went to go see this together.
and that's been a brief history.
Yeah.
No, but it is a time-honored tradition to give our guests the first opportunity to give the brief history. So, Tim, why don't you just give all of our brief histories in one fell swoop?
Well, thousands of years ago. It was back when the movie came out in the new year in January, I believe, and it was kind of a planned field trip for any of us from two hosts of you and any of the guest hosts that could come along. And it turned out only I could show up because there's only my cat to preoccupy me in my personal life. So I came down and we saw the movie together, and it was the first movie I had seen in the theater since, was it Thor that I saw it with you two?
Yeah, Love and Thunder.
Yeah. Thor: Love and Condoms, and
Another movie with a big jacked man.
of caramel, yeah, candied people.
Yeah.
But it was
condoms.
oh dear God, I hope not. But
We have a follower. I can't even say we have 1,000 followers on Twitch anymore. We have 999. What the fuck?
no, we got to get more.
It's a horrible game looking at the clicker, Jason. Just don't pay attention to it.
Okay.
Yeah. But but the one thing that was actually great was to go see an A24 movie in the theater again. That for me had not been since before pandemic. So particularly for me, that was actually a lot of fun. And it was good to go to a theater not filled with a rowdy Piper crowd. But so a quick little pun. But hey,
Was it Love and Thunder when we had like a bunch of kids behind us just screaming the whole time, and we were like, "Oh my!"
No, that's when we went to see Across the Spider-Verse, and there was
right.
two young girls who were just saying the thing would happen on the screen, and then they would just say it to each other back. And you were on my like left, and Madison, my wife, was on my right. So they were talking basically into Madison's head, and Madison hates like noise when she's trying to pay attention to things. But it was affecting all of us. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I think the only reason I didn't tell them to shut the fuck up is because they were having fun, and I didn't want to. Like, it's not like they were being obnoxious; they were just enjoying the movie.
Yeah.
But seriously, shut the fuck up. We're trying to enjoy the movie too.
It's a lesson to everybody. We're going back to the movies now. Please, it's not a party unless it's Fast and Furious movie. Those can be a party.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one during those. I don't give a fuck. Yeah.
But outside of that, I've watched the movie twice. It's my little habit when it comes to my appearances on your show. And thank you very much for having me on again. I think this is actually like 7th or 8th. So it's getting pretty up there, which is wow. Thank you very much. But so I watched it twice more, and it was interesting to revisit it. And that's my entire brief history.
You're right. It is. This is your 7th time. And because you acknowledged it, you will not be asked to come back.
That's it.
No, I'm fully kidding. You are up there as one of our best guests, hands down. And it's funny, if you've been watching this show for a while since Tim started, you can actually see the evolution of his of his setup. He started from like a grainy, like
with a soup can and a string.
Exactly. And
hello.
Ahoy hoy.
Just shouting internet into the window. Yeah.
Now you look great. We need to get you a ring light, I think is the next thing.
Yeah.
If you have something new every time you come on, it'll be great in like 10 years where you're more professional than us at that point, I would say.
I'll do my little bits here and there. I care about the show, so I like to contribute any way I can.
I appreciate it. You're like the fifth Beatle.
Not the fake Paul McCartney or whatever.
No, there was some other Beatle that like I think it was.
I'm joking. I know what it means.
Okay, I'll just explain jokes to you from now on and pretend I don't get them.
I was also making a joke.
That said,
a good one.
Luna, Dev, and Erich just wanted to just say this. Also, Luna hates
Paul is
fun
dead.
in
Yeah,
comedy as well.
He's been replaced by a lookalike. Robo Paul is what they call him now.
Robo Paul.
Because that was the that theory with the what was it, the White Album or whatever. There was one song playing backwards, and when you played it forward, it sounded like Paul is dead. Paul is dead.
And yeah, he's not wearing shoes on the cover or whatever.
Yeah, on Abbey Road. Yeah.
Also, he looks completely different. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Steve.
Hi.
What's your brief history with the film The Iron Claw?
Well, the year was 2023, and the movie Iron Claw had come out in theaters on December 22nd. I think we saw it in the new year, though. Yeah, I saw it with you.
It came out on Christmas, yeah.
I didn't know very much about the backstory of the Van Buren boys or whatever they're called.
Von Erich.
The Von Erich.
The Van Buren boys.
That's the right symbol, whatever it is.
Yeah, the Von Erichs. And I didn't really want to know too much going in, lest it taint my movie watching experience. So I didn't look anything up, and I watched the movie, and I quite enjoyed it. And by enjoyed, I mean I was depressed for 2.5 hours and felt really sick a lot throughout it because it's pretty heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And then I watched it again today. That's my brief history.
That's pretty much it, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same for me, but I have a little bit to add to that. So the three of us saw it together, which was great. We had a brief conversation after, and that I think that's sort of where I developed my this month. I wanted to sort of, this is like the crown jewel of this wrestling month, because in my opinion, there's not a lot of wrestling movies. This might be the best wrestling movie. But what's interesting is I had when this movie
have
came
you seen
out,
Nacho Libre? I'm pretty sure that's the best one.
We're gonna cover the wrestlers, so like maybe that's a Darren Aronofsky movie or no?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it is. So that might be like a better pound for pound film, but that'll we'll get there when we do. I just wanted to talk about how leading up to this, I watched an episode of a television program called, I'm a huge wrestling fan, I should say. That's obviously why I'm doing this. I'm the announcer for Super Kicked here in Toronto. I've gone to wrestling school. I've been a fan of professional wrestling since I was probably 8 years old, all in. And leading up to this movie coming out, I was extremely excited. They were finally going to make a biopic on a real story that does have the weight of being an Oscar-worthy film, which The Wrestler was kind of that, but Randy the Ram is a completely fictional character. He's based off of characters. He's based off of wrestling tropes, but it isn't a real thing. Now, a couple years ago, a television show comes out. It's called Dark Side of the Ring, okay? Jason Eisner created it. Jason Eisner is known for making Hobo with a Shotgun and a couple other indie flicks. He's from my hometown, Halifax, as well. And he created this show called Dark Side of the Ring, and he put out this episode called Confidential: The Last of the Von Erichs. And in that, he outlines the Von Erich family, because the one surviving member, who of course is Kevin Von Erich in this. And you get to sort of hear the story of the Von Erichs like told from his own mouth. Okay. Shortly after I watched that, a couple years later, there's this podcast called Behind the Bastards. If you're watching this, you're probably familiar with it. They basically take evil men and women from history and sort of like break down why they were so shitty and evil.
Mhm.
They cover people like, I think they've even done like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and stuff too. Like, you know what I mean? But there's a 5-part series on Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who is very much in the news right now. If you know, you know. He was the disgraced former owner of the WWE. Now he's, just so many horrible things have come out about him. But right before all that
He
stuff,
basically looks like Homelander. If you put him in a Homelander costume, it would be appropriate.
It'd be Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
But Behind the Bastards did a 5-part, like, I guess, expose on his whole life and times. And during one of them, they were like, side note, Fritz von Erich and the von Erich family, this is the perfect time to talk about it because Fritz von Erich was a very similar man to Vince McMahon. And in this movie, we see why. He treated his kids like shit. Everything he touched turned to shit. There's the von Erich curse, this and this and that.
Yeah.
And what's great is that tells the exact story of this movie. This movie has a couple things missing. There's a whole brother they omitted. The writer decided not to include the brother who had asthma and brittle bones, and then also killed himself because it was like that happened right before Kerry Von Erich killed himself. And this movie's already fucked. This movie's already so depressing.
Yeah,
he didn't want to Jenga. I read an article on GQ that was like he didn't want a Jenga tower of depression to just hamstringing everybody in the audience in the theater. So
it would have made people leave.
Yes,
people would have left the theater. They've been like, this can't be real.
It's already a lot.
Be real.
It's already a lot. For a 2-hour and 10-minute runtime to put another 15 minutes in about how this other brother really wanted to be a wrestler. So the musician character is sort of an amalgamation of two brothers. That's why when he gets injured, it's sort of like he has like an arm problem that doesn't go right. And anyway, we'll get to that when we talk about the movie. So this movie comes out, I see it, and unfortunately, unlike Steve, it was kind of tainted for me. It's objectively a good movie, but
objectionably.
because I knew the story inside and outside from being a wrestling fan and from seeing two very good, better tellings of the story, I'm gonna have some things to say in my final thoughts about that.
Yeah, I remember when we left the theater, you were like, it was all right. And I was like, what? I was like wiping tears away from my eyes. Like, yeah, man, whatever you say.
Yeah. But I did want to I wanted to include all that in my brief history because that's what the brief history segment is for. And I don't want to have to be constantly talking about, I saw this, I saw that throughout it. So now that you have that knowledge about me, I'm sort of it's like when we did Weird Al month, and I'm sort of like,
I'm so glad you picked this month.
A dictionary,
like, except for maybe that last movie.
I'm sort of like a walking wrestling dictionary, right? So this will be fun.
I think
to talk
you mean
about.
encyclopedia.
I do. I don't know the difference. Apparently, I know all the wrestling words, buddy.
Yeah.
Better look at dictionary and encyclopedia.
Anyway,
I know what ring his bell means.
Yeah, I want to get that out of the way just so
I know what suck it means. It wasn't suck it created by wrestling. I remember that in the 6th grade running around.
I'm a wrestling thesaurus. That's right, Drupal.
Thesaurus.
Drupal wants to shout out Hulk Hogan and Mr. Mom, which is an 11 out of 10, of course. And I'm a wrestling thesaurus.
I don't know if I've ever seen that movie, to be honest.
Mr. Mom?
I get it confused with another one of the same era because he was in a lot of movies at that point, right? And like, I didn't really.
Mr. Mom with Michael Keaton?
No, yeah, Mr. Mom is Michael Keaton. Mr. Nanny is.
Oh, Mr. Nanny?
Is
it called Mr. Nanny?
Yeah, right?
It's not just called like The Nanny or something?
No, it's Mr. Nanny, 1993 film
starring. What a weird name. Like, we have to be very clear that this is a man. It's Hulk Hogan like, holding two children by their ankles or whatever on the cover.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah, it's him holding. Yeah, there's a bunch of covers for it, but it's Hulk Hogan, Madeline Zima, who was in a bunch of stuff in the 90s as a little kid. David Johansen of the New York City Dolls is the bad guy, and Sherman Hemsley is like just there being like, I'm Sherman Hemsley. I do yelling.
Right.
Mr. Mom, there it is.
Well,
And I think that's the one where Hulk Hogan's driving on his motorcycle and somebody just throws a dog into the
Yeah.
Oh, isn't there a
sliver.
movie where Hulk Hogan is also secretly an alien, and like at the end he like
With
That's-
Christopher Lloyd?
Yeah, that's Suburban Commando.
that's real, right? I didn't. Dream
That's
of
real.
it. Okay.
Unfortunately, it is real.
So I think I've mentioned it before. When I was a kid, I was babysat by these really irresponsible like dirtbag people when I was a kid.
Oh, was it Hulk Hogan?
It was Mr. Nanny himself. But like they would just throw us in the basement with their kids, and that's where I saw the Evil Dead at the age of 4 years old. Was because I should not have watched The Evil Dead when I was 4 years. I thought it was not a real movie for a long time, and that my brain had just
Don't you have it like Ghostbusters and The Evil Dead?
Well, it's because they would let their kids watch anything, right? So it was like we watched Ghostbusters 2, we watched The Evil Dead, we watched Suburban Commando, and all these movies horrified me because I was too young to watch any of them. And so for years, I thought that Ghostbusters was as frightening as The Evil Dead. I mean, The Evil Dead now is kind of comical to watch when you know what's going on, but it's so gruesome and gory as a child.
Yeah.
10 times scarier than Ghostbusters would be or would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Suburban Commando, I was like, I didn't know that was a real movie for a long time, and even up to just a few moments ago, I was not fully I was not fully aware that it was real and that maybe I had made it up. And also thought that it was Mr. Nanny. Like, is there a scene in Mr. Nanny where he's a secret alien?
I was a nanny today.
Anyway.
It's funny that in Suburban Commando, I had it on. Didn't have the movie, but I had the trailer before the original Ninja Turtles on VHS.
Yeah.
I saw the trailer for it like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And I just remember Christopher Lloyd gets frozen, and Hulk Hogan's driving down the street with him in like a convertible. I think maybe shooting, and later in the movie he goes, "I was frozen today," like Doc Brown.
Yeah,
and that was a thing I remember from my kids' childhood. My child kids. What?
Yeah, was that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 that VHS?
Yeah, Turtles 2. Yeah.
You guys talking about the secret of the ooze?
Secret of that booze there, that goo.
I'm gonna tell you right now, not enough ooze, not enough secrets in that movie.
No, Baxter Stockman's immediately like these everything's big because of the mutagen.
Yeah.
Look at these dandelions. They're wacky.
He's giving away the secret right away. There's no more secrets left.
Then they don't even turn him into a big fly man, a big house fly man.
Yeah.
That classic Vanilla Ice moment, yeah.
I feel like those movies weirdly tried to distance themselves from the comic books and the cartoon show in a way that was not necessarily beneficial to the movie. They're like, we're going to create our own monsters, and it's like, why don't you just use a pig and another weird, in
a wild boar, or in
a rhino.
And rhino, yeah.
This movie's already exactly like the TV show at the time. Why can't they just maybe they didn't want to have more weird prosthetics.
But they had two other monsters. Like they make a werewolf and another turtle.
A snapping turtle. The Toka and Razor don't talk, but maybe they didn't want more prosthetics for talking animals.
Oh, right.
Well, actually, they did talk because they called Shredder Mama.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but that's a really easy puppet movement. If you say, what do you mean? What do you mean, Shredder? You want us to go what? You got to have some real articulation.
If you want a very good representation of the Ninja Turtles, ironically enough, cartoon, the Ninja Turtles 2 movie from like modern days has everybody in it. Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, Shredder. They all look crazy.
Well, I still haven't seen the newest one, the animated one that came out. I'd like to see that, though.
Also good. That has every villain in the Ninja Turtles Rogues Gallery in it, which I really appreciated.
I remember when we were when I was 10 or 11, a new Teenage Ninja Turtles live action TV show came out, and they added a
Venus.
Was her name? Her name was Venus, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, couldn't they have found a real artist and not a work of art?
Also, Venus was a work of art. Yeah, sorry, that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
They could have been they could have called her Yoko, Yoko Ono.
The epitome of art. Yes.
There's no such thing as female Renaissance artists. Okay.
I'm sure there were. They probably just went by male names. Yeah.
I was just gonna say probably that. Yeah.
Michelangelo is canonically historically a woman. Anyway, that's our brief
Maybe
history.
they went
I
with
guess.
Venus as in like Vincent van Gogh or something. But I don't think that he was Renaissance.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah,
he was like modern. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not talk about this anymore because I don't want to expose how little I know about art history.
They should have called it
As an artist.
As an artist, yeah.
Let's do a little director talk because there's not much to say about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much to say about Sean Durkin.
No.
Timothy John Durkin.
My name is Timothy Von Jerkin.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
Yeah, I think this is like one of his only movies.
Let's shoot this piece of shit.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit. Sound. Speed. Action!
When Steve was like, I'm going to do the sounds now, I was nervous, but not because I don't think you can do it, just because like you're learning how much I was doing during the show.
Pump your fucking brakes, pal.
No, but I just mean like there's a,
I need time to get into a flow, and like
Yes.
I know we've just been since we got this new platform. It's a little bit. I get too ahead of myself in my thoughts, and then I forget that I'm supposed to be doing sound effects.
it's all good, man. That's exactly what I was trying to say. You're doing a great job.
Anyway, this guy, he hasn't made. I think this is his only movie, and I gotta say,
That's his fourth.
but I mean, like that came out in theater. Like two of them are shorts.
Martha.
One of them is a
Mercy,
movie, but I
May,
don't know if it's
Marlene.
theatrically released.
Yeah.
Dead Ringers is TV. A bunch of them are TV.
The Nest. He's a producer on a bunch of stuff, but also nothing really of note.
I must say though, like for being such a prestige project, it's pretty impressive. Like considering he has such a little filmography, you would expect him to have like 4 or 5 heavy hitters under his belt. Look at all these wrestling.
This is his breakout thing, I guess. He's going
As far
to
as mainstream goes, yeah.
It's going to win something next Oscars. I'm sure, you know what I mean? Like maybe sound design, maybe
It
who knows?
It came out in 2023, man. The Oscars are over.
No, it'll be part of the next Oscars because
No, it won't.
Yeah, well,
Did they not
last year? 2023's Oscars are done.
no, but there's a cutoff. It'll be in the next Oscars.
Are you sure about this?
Yeah, because it came out at Christmas time.
Yeah,
It'll be the next-
I believe that's the case. I also hate the Oscars in general, though.
Fair.
Yeah, I and also things like online reviewers like Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not a fan of those, but
I'll look at it, though.
I still check them out because yeah, for sure. But I don't like how they dictate how well some movies will and won't do.
But listen to this.
Yeah.
From my point of view, from my standpoint, if this movie wins any Oscars,
yeah,
the floodgates of wrestling biographies open, and I get all kinds of shit. There's already a Hulk Hogan movie coming down the pike that I think they were waiting to gauge how this does to finish it. There was supposed to be a Vince McMahon movie, but he's the worst sex pervert possibly in the history of cinema, in the history of entertainment. Maybe P. Diddy's worse. Vince McMahon pretty bad. I don't know if that movie's ever.
He's not a wrestler. No, I'm just kidding.
No, in entertainment, like in entertainment.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon and P. Diddy kind of like got Me Too'd at the same time, and Me Too is not the way to put that. They got canceled and obliterated from the history.
Or just, you know what would be the appropriate word would be exposed for their horrible crimes.
Exposed for the horrible.
I really don't like when people are like, "Oh, he got Me Too'd," because it makes it sound like you're not taking it as seriously as like, no,
Right.
his horrible crimes are exposed to the
He got
Yeah.
I think canceled is a little bit too light of a word now too. So the whole
canceled infers that you can come back from
yes
crimes that you've committed, but like
Mhm.
I think that this is like Cosby level shit. You know,
it's
like,
absolute. Both of them are Cosby level exposures.
Yeah.
We can't say they got Bill Cosby though, because that has a different connotation. Anyway, that said,
yeah, this whole episode is gonna get canceled.
Sean Durkin, yes, you're right. But my point is that if this movie wins, I know I agree with you. The Oscars are whatever, like whatever, who cares? But if it wins, it's going to win Golden Globes. It's going to win Oscars, I think. And then when it does, we're going to see a bunch of these ranging in quality biopics.
Yeah.
Lots of them can be like this. I really want to see what they do with the Hulk Hogan movie. And I wanted to see what they did with the Vince McMahon movie, but from what I understand is the Vince McMahon movie was going to be very hands-on from Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Which means it was going to be 100% fiction and film in a positive light. Now
he would have literally been wearing the Homelander outfit the whole time.
Now we're going to get a Netflix miniseries about Vince McMahon, and that's very different. You don't want that.
It's going to start with like, ding, ding. And then see that thing of him, he's like walking out and he looks like he's one of those robots where they figured out how to make them walk normally. Like the Boston Mechanics lab robots that like for a while they were really wobbly.
Just have a bunch of engineers kick him around. But you are right about the Oscars and things like it help mainstream certain things. And for wrestling stories, like my big introduction to the darker side of things for wrestling was Beyond the Mat, that documentary that features Jake the Snake. Because I was also a big wrestling fan as a kid. I remember losing my mind when Coco Beware would come on to do a match and all that kind of stuff. But like this movie, for like this being the first big movie for this director, and to have like his cinematic voice fully realized, and I mean that's without really taking a good strong look at like director of photography and editor and all that kind of stuff, and seeing what their body of work is like. But it's still like, as far as the look of the movie, the editing, the pacing. And this movie is like, what, 2.5 hours long or something?
2:05.
It's very, very well paced for how much happens in it.
Yeah. So the last like 48 hours I've watched Oppenheimer, The Whale, and The Iron Claw. Mm-hmm. And I'm having a little bit of like prestige filmmaking overload where I'm like, I need to watch something with cardboard sets that are.
I need
like
to watch Batman and Robin.
No, I'm talking. I need to watch something that is like a sci-fi original, like straight to TV movie. I don't even.
The Transformators or something, or
something.
I need to watch the whole Asylum films. Fucking.
I need to watch something that has like a retired actor from the late 70s, early 80s coming out of retirement to make like a short cameo at the beginning as a general or something.
You are one step away from a Roger Corman film.
But anyway, what I mean to say is like The Whale I did not like, and let's not talk about it too much. But Oppenheimer I did like, but it had this really weird pacing to it where there are these long and very often, and like they would come up maybe every like between 5 and 15 minutes. You'd get a long montage that's accompanied by very intense music and Oppenheimer's like way he sees the world mixed with things happening, like information you're meant to digest and absorb. And it's so intense and it happens so often that it kind of takes you out of the movie a little bit. And the same thing happens in this movie, only it's everything is so deliberate and important, and everything you're seeing, it's not like shoe leathery, And I'm not saying that Oppenheimer was, but it's almost like they try and shove 5 years of stuff happening in Oppenheimer into your mind within, a 30-second to 2-minute period. Whereas this, they pair it with fights, it's so smart the way you're getting very important information emotionally from the characters that's paired with these really well choreographed and really well shot fight sequences. And it just works so incredibly well. And they also, they choose likable music, stuff that most people are familiar with, so that you're kind of like toe tapping to it the entire time. And it's all often very like off shot by the horrible stuff that's happening in the movie that you're feeling sick about.
Yeah.
You're trying to process that. And then you're also given these really good visuals to help kind of like take the medicine, I guess, to get to the next horrifying thing. And it just horrifying thing after horrifying thing it happens to poor Kevin in this movie. It's mostly from his perspective. I think it's safe to call him the main character of this movie, though it is very much like an ensemble film where everybody's got their moment. He's the thread from the beginning to the end. Anyway, maybe I'm kind of getting off director talk now. I'm just kind of getting into the structural stuff of the film, so we can move on if you'd like, or we can keep talking about this guy.
Well,
I think he's a good filmmaker. I want to see what he
Yeah.
does next, to be honest.
Yes.
The only other thing I wanted to cover in this little bit was that he is Canadian. I just wanted to mention that, which is interesting. And I wanted to give a shout out to like how he, except for the Ric Flair portrayal, which we'll talk about, which has been pulled apart online. A lot of the other portrayals in the movie
Pulled apart by who though? Like who's pulling that
People like-
performance?
people like me.
Hardcore wrestler
Could have
folk.
been exactly the same as Ric Flair. But the thing
okay.
is a lot of the performances in this and a lot of the likenesses of the characters they got were pretty spot on. Ironically, I'm looking at a side-by-side picture of the real Kevin Von Erich and Zac Efron. Zac Efron looked more like Kevin Von Erich when he wasn't a big Roy Magoo freak, which is they both had kind of baby faces.
Well, that's
When he-
probably why they hired him, and then he's like, I got to get into crazy wrestling shape for this
Yeah.
movie, and then went a little bit too far. It's like when Chris Hemsworth got the role of Thor, they did his measurements, and then he went out for 6 months before filming and came back, and they're like, this costume is too small. We got to make the costume bigger now. It doesn't fit on his body.
It'd be great if it ended up being too big for him.
But the guy they got for Harley Race is was probably one of the best things I've ever seen. And I just wanted to give another shout out to one of the executive producers on this movie, MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who does have a cameo in this that they mostly cut out. He plays a cousin of the Von Erich named Lance Von Erich, who didn't have the curse. That's probably why they didn't focus on him, because he also survived. But
I can't wait to talk about the curse, but yeah. Okay.
He put together, he was one of the reasons why this movie got put together. And he's one of the best wrestlers today. And he's one of the closest modern wrestlers to be a real like Ric Flair, where he's like plays a rich guy, and then outside of wrestling, he still acts like that. So I just wanted to say that like they did a good job with incorporating wrestlers into this, because they could have easily just had nobody at all, no wrestlers at all in this. It could have made it so much worse. Chavo Guerrero, who was in wrestling forever, he's part of the Guerrero family. Eddie Guerrero, who you may have heard of, was his brother or his cousin or brother or something. I can't remember it right the second, but he does a lot of he trains actors how to wrestle. So he would have trained all of these actors how to do their bits. And in a lot of scenes, you never really see an actor wrestling an actor, because you need a wrestler to sort of help you through the choreography. And I think that's important. I think directing wise, Sean did a good job at making it feel really real, because he clearly either loves wrestling or has a great respect for it. Same with Zac Efron. Clearly he has a great respect for it. And I appreciate that, because I've seen when they don't care. And as much as I like Glow, great TV show, nobody fucking knew what they were doing. Nobody really knew how to wrestle. It was more focused on the interpersonal drama. Wrestling came second. And then inversely, like heels went a little bit too far the other way, where they were just like trying to hit a mainstream audience with wrestling terminology that just goes over everybody's head. But anyway, this is a good middle ground of presenting professional wrestling to a wide audience. But with that, why don't we move along to the sexual body of this episode?
Ooh.
Ho, 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 ho! Everybody back up, because here comes the body of the episode.
And what a body is it? Holy smokes. Nobody's that vascular when they get out of bed.
Flexing in his sleep.
Yeah.
It's true. And
That's how Kevin Von Erich sleeps. He sleeps like just constantly doing sit-ups. He's like asleep while he's doing it.
doing those sit-ups where you also like crunch your legs too.
Yeah.
I am just gonna hit this right quick because of how fast it happens. But
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
they say the name of this movie about 400 times during the movie. It's one of those. Not as bad as Roadhouse. We watched the first half of Roadhouse on vacation, and they say Roadhouse 35 times a second. But they do say the Iron Claw a lot in this.
And we will never bring up Roadhouse on this podcast
Right.
again.
Until we cover it when I do Roadhouse month for my birthday next year.
Yeah. You should call it House Trip month, and you do Roadhouse and road trip movies only.
Exactly. And I just do Roadhouse, Euro Trip, Road Trip.
And then the Roadrunner movie.
Yeah.
Or just call it the Crossroads month.
Yeah, and do a Crossroads from Justin to Brittany or whatever it was called.
Oh, God.
Sorry. I think that was 2 different movies. Anyway, my point is that 3 minutes and 20 seconds, they say the Iron Claw because it's the flashback to the past where Fritz von Erich is the wrestlers in black and white, which is a touch that I sometimes don't like, but I liked it in this. Mm-hmm. He wants to be the NWA champion. NWA is the National Wrestling Alliance. Something that he never gets, because I don't think the curse is a curse. I think that these people all suck.
We'll get into it as we go. He is definitely the curse of the family.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do think that this opening is. I think it's also supposed to be an homage to the Raging Bull. Tim, I don't know if you agree with me.
I can see that too. Yeah, with especially with compared to like late 70s, 80s, and 90s wrestling, where it got a lot more colorful, not just visually, literally, but like in depictions and characterization, where people are taking on very different personas, almost taking notes from like luchador type stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas for a long time, it was just kind of like the strong men from the circus wrestling each other type thing, and it evolved into this big stage theater production. And sorry?
I was just going to say, if you go back far enough, wrestling started in like lumberjack yards, where it was basically like, who can beat up this guy? And then a little bit after that, somebody was like, we can monetize this by like fixing it and putting it in the circus. And then that professional wrestling as we know it 100 years later, and it hasn't really changed. And there's that section like you're talking about, Tim, where it was literally just the strong guy from one town goes to another town to fight the strong man of that town. Mm-hmm. And they talk it out beforehand. And wrestling matches in Fritz von Erich's time didn't have the glitz and glam that it has now. There were no characters, like you said. Mm-hmm. There was literally like holds. It was very much derived from amateur wrestling. Holds, and then they introduced like the body slam and the fucking headlock. And right. It's like,
but even if you just look at the music that they play in this scene and throughout the movie, it's very much meant to like evoke gladiatorial movies from the golden era of cinema, and they take that throughout everything in the movie. Like when they're playing the promos for the villains in the movie, like Race and Flair, it's got this like slow build as it pushes in onto the television with these like triumphant and evil sounding trumpets, kind of like, you know, it's like a rolling storm looming over the von Erich family, which is like this is part of the curse, but really, like, no, it's not. The curse is coming from inside the house, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, this grand dysfunction as the pageantry builds.
Yeah,
but the black and white beginning of it is also like much like in Raging Bull, where when they're in the ring and fighting their matches, it's like they're tuning things out and like color kind of fades out. Because I don't know if this was something intentional, but you can kind of see as well that there's an immediate crowd around the stage, and then it gets very empty, and then you can kind of see a crowd in the stands in the background of it all. But there's kind of like not much.
It's supposed to be like tunnel vision almost, right? Like he's so focused on what's happening in the ring, and that goes again throughout the movie, where he's a very shitty person, but he's got this crazy focus that it's so laser beamed that he doesn't pay attention to anything outside of that focus, right? Including his own family. Yeah. And we're also getting a lot of character notes, even from just this one sequence, right? Like once the music fades and the sound effects kind of pull inward, you hear that the crowd is booing him, and he's kind of feasting on it, right? And he's putting his hands up and being like, I'll snap his fucking neck or whatever.
Yeah.
Like he's to kill this guy.
Because like they don't outright say it, but I believe Fritz von Erich was back in the day, as the term goes, heel. He was a wrestling villain. Because I think the idea of the Fritz von Erich name originally was like to evoke Nazi Germany type stuff.
Right.
So Yeah, absolutely. And his
double bad.
and in the movie, his offstage persona matches that in many ways. But that beginning of where it opens up with him just stomping his opponent down, and it's like this is going to be the rest of the movie, him stomping other people down.
Yeah,
and in my opinion, he is the Iron Claw. That he and when he's demonstrating the Iron Claw to people, he's pushing people down. He's oppressive and opposing to everybody else.
Yeah. I will say that Stu Hart, Bret Hart's father, suggested the Von Erich name to Fritz because Fritz at some point was a Nazi wrestling character, which was much more widely accepted back then. It's been suggested to wrestlers over the years. There's been KKK wrestlers. There's been all kinds of gross shit. Right up to the 90s, where there was an idea to have kind of like a reverse Captain America, where the gimmick would be like this guy was frozen since World War II. And in 1991, a Nazi would come emerging from the back to sort of hate the black. I
think that
and Jewish wrestlers.
There was a time period, not that long ago, where these types of caricatures, you could do them because they were so ridiculous, because no one would take them seriously. And it's like, look at this cartoon character coming from the past. Isn't that funny? Whereas now we're starting to realize, like, oh shit, like these people still exist and still are like in places of power, and it's frightening. And so for you to, if someone was to come forward with a character like that now, we'd be like, no, thank you. Please get out of here. Because nobody needs or wants this. Yeah.
Weirdos would be like, they'd get it wrong, like they do with Homelander, like they do with It's Always Sunny. They just get the wrong, like they do with a lot of movies like Scarface and I
think that very creative people who are really smart sometimes give American the benefit of the doubt to the masses. And the unfortunate reality is that there's a lot of stupidity in the masses that you don't take into consideration when you're making something that's so ridiculous. You're like, this is so ridiculous, no one will take it seriously. Not everybody is going to take what you've done at a subtext level. They're going to take it at face value. And if they like it at face value, then there's something wrong with those people. Anyway, I think we're getting a little bit too serious here. Let's move back to.
So Fritz is like, I'm going to be the NWA champion one day, and we need to buy a house. So what I've done is I've bought a new car.
Wait. We have to talk about the actor, the man who plays Fritz.
I was going to mention Maura Tierney, but this guy,
Holt McCallany.
Holt McCallany. Yeah,
McCallany. Pardon me.
He basically looks like an N64 character. Like he's very blocky.
Yes, he's got a blockhead on him. He was in Fight Club too. Yeah,
he was. Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff. And
he's in 80 things. So yeah, he's been around.
So like, I think his performance in this movie is quite good, and I do like him in that opening sequence. There's something about him though that. Like, I'm in no way saying that he's a bad actor, because I think that he is quite a good actor, but his presence is almost like 90% in his voice and the way he speaks. And then, there's not much else going on in terms of, I mean, he's an imposing figure. He's quite intimidating looking because he's basically a cube. Like he's got a square head and a square body.
Yeah.
He's got a barrel for a torso and then a smaller barrel on top of that.
Yeah.
But like his voice is extremely powerful. It's almost like I feel like he should be in every voice acting performance somewhere. Like he should be in everything somehow.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that his performance is bad in this, because I think it's quite powerful. And we get our first Fritz speech in the moments that you're talking about here, Jason, where he's talking about the car, and we get so many Fritz speeches throughout this movie.
Where he just lays it out. Here's how it is.
It's like he's just constantly got speeches going in his head all the time, just in case he needs to whip one out to like inspire confidence or have some sort of detrimental iron claw pull you down to the depths of depression.
Yeah. Do you know who he reminds me of in a very weird, non-ironic way? The dad from the Dewey Cox story, Walk Hard. It's like the wrong boy died. He reminds me of,
I was going to say the dad from Talladega Nights, another movie that is very similar.
You're not first, you're last.
That's the whole speech when they're in the car is basically if you're not first, you're last. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a weird like he's that character where he's a giant, like I've seen
I literally wrote in my notes, this is a real if you ain't first, you're last mentality. Forgot I wrote that.
He reminds me of those, like when I was a kid growing up, a dad, you go over to like somebody's house and their weird dad who's not around very much would come storming in yelling about something.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm a neighborhood kid. Why am I getting yelled at by this 6'9"
blockhead,
fucking
yeah.
crazy man's man?
Yeah.
And that's a big problem that these young boys faced growing up, that this dad has like unchecked rage issues and depression and CTE from being dropped on his head. And then that's passed down to the kids because they all have to become wrestlers. They started wrestling when they were probably 8 years old.
One thing that like is kind of curious is they never show any kind of signs of physical abuse from the father, right? Like it's all pure
emotional
and mental abuse. Yeah. Where like I don't know enough about the story, like the actual story. Like, did he physically abuse them? I don't know, but from what I see from the movie, if they added that in there, it probably would have been even more difficult to digest. And we have that time jump where it's like they're little kids all the way up into they're all full grown men who could probably kick the shit out of him if they really needed to.
As they do kind of later show.
Kevin almost fucking strangles him to death.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the emotional trauma of it, where he does have this hold on the whole family, not just the kids. Where he's the authority, and it's like, and it's funny you mentioned that, like everyone kind of remembers growing up seeing one of those dads. That's one thing that I thought was well accomplished by this movie, is that even though we're talking about something that most people do not live with, where it's like the professional wrestling lifestyle and how intense and extreme it is, but there's elements in here that are very, very familiar that we can kind of see and understand. Even if we haven't experienced it necessarily ourselves, we can associate with this. And at times, like it's almost, it almost comes off as a little like, this can't be real. This is so silly. To be so over the top, like the idea of him straight up saying to them at the breakfast table, "You're my favorite. He's second. He's third." He's constantly listing the rankings of his own children, to them,
and not just at home. He does it in front of a national audience at one point as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't even move the needle for any of them. They've heard this before.
Like, but this is also like he's the kind of guy.
3.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that would also say things like, autism doesn't exist, when it's like, clearly you have autism, man. You have he's ranking his children in front of them. He sees everything as a competition, right? Like everything is, we need to move, we need to make a move now in order for us to get to this position, so that we can get to this position, so that we can get to this position. So like it is implied that he's very smart as well, right? Like he's not a fool, but he has absolutely no way of, not to jump ahead too much, but even when he realizes like, we need to make one of you the world champion now, which one is it going to be? And they both want to do it. It's like, rather than make a logical choice, he flips a coin, right? And it's like, he has absolutely no way of having emotional connection to them on a real, he's like, I love you, but I'm not going to express why or how or in any
or tell you more than once in your whole life.
Yeah. And no crying aloud, and
it's a very common thing in wrestling too, where failed football players will end up in wrestling because they can't do anything else.
No,
and when you fail you also fail at wrestling. That's a big thing. A lot of wrestlers have come through that were failed football players and just couldn't hack it because it's a different sport. And it's a different thing, and it's fake. It's not fake per se. It's like, it's a choreographed dance.
Oh, there's a scene in this movie that I think articulates it so perfectly, which I think we'll get to when we get to it. But the explanation of like the difference between fake and what wrestling actually is, I think in this movie, for a layman who like, because I think there's like a snooty look down your nose behavior,
wrestling's fake.
Attitude that people have about wrestling that is like, it's foolish. And like, I've said it before when I was like 14 or 15, being like, well, wrestling's fake. But it's like, obviously it's fucking fake. What do you think that people like actually dress up like a fucking samurai? And
I actually think that an undertaker who has mystical powers.
I've come back from the dead many
and
times.
buried alive, no problem. Be back on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And the thing about WWE, even it's like a lot of people have said it's not necessarily wrestling. It's a wrestling show about wrestlers, and then you watch other wrestling companies that are presented more like a sport, and they're a different thing. So wrestling, even there, has so many different flavors.
Real wrestling is boring and kind of sexual to watch.
Yeah. Well, real wrestling, the sideways evolution of that is basically just MMA, and MMA also is kind of boring.
I'm talking about Olympic wrestling. If you go to the Olympics and watch wrestling, that's
Yeah.
real wrestling, and it's not really that entertaining. And each match lasts like 45 seconds. Like it's not entertaining at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's entertaining to some people, but I mean, to me, it's like I had to do a wrestling unit in gym when I was in high school, and it was just like it felt so weird and like odd to me, right? But then like some people were really good at it and loved it. But I'm like, I have no interest in this. It feels violent
like
and strange, and I don't.
Amateur style wrestling, or Greco-Roman style wrestling, as it's known,
that's when you do it naked, though, right?
That's when you do it with a loincloth.
Greek style.
But that kind of wrestling is more like that's a real sport, quote unquote. Well, not even quote unquote. It's a real sport, and I think it's more fun to do, or more
in the nude.
To do in the nude. No, it's more fun to do than it is to watch for that very reason. The reason why I don't like MMA that much, like I'll watch it, but I'm not one of those people that's analyzing each little thing.
I also don't like watching people get like
maimed.
Trauma.
Yeah.
Get
And in
kicked in the head so hard that their brain is probably damaged.
What I was going to say is professional wrestling is two men take each other's lives into each other's hands and do these incredibly acrobatic feats that emulate a fight that two people couldn't have in real life. It's more like you're watching superheroes fight, or you're playing with your action figures,
or like Cirque du Soleil or something, where it's like this highly practiced and choreographed thing. Yeah, like I think we all get it. It's just like the attitude of, like I said, people looking down their nose at it as this sort of like subhuman form of entertainment is that they just don't really care to look into it more than that. And I think
I feel that way about baseball or hockey. Right?
That's what I'm saying.
You know
That's the comparison we're making about all these things, right?
Yeah.
But I think that when Kevin's future wife in the diner, when she says, well, isn't it all fake? And he's like, there's nothing fake about what we do. And then he explains it as like, the belt that I get is not me winning a belt because I want to fight. It's me doing very well at my job and I'm getting a promotion. Similar to like if you do well at your job at a Home Depot, you'll be given a promotion to assistant manager and then to manager. These belts are essentially me making my way up within an organization in the same way you would in any company.
And then on top of that, you become the face of the company when you're the world's champion.
Yeah.
So it's the ultimate promotion, but then you have to carry, like it's a promotion where you basically become the CEO. You have to carry the company on your back. You have to go do all the media appearances. You have to go out and sort of represent what the company's about. That's why they pick the champions they do in wrestling.
But he also explains that like performance is not necessarily you going and kicking someone's ass. Performance is you getting the audience on your side and having a community grow around you and love you as a persona, just in the way that you would as a celebrity in any other forum, right? Like you need to get people to like you in order for them to want to promote you. And I think it's like a really good explanation that you could give to anybody who says something like, well, isn't it all fake? And have them listen to that and they would completely understand you immediately. They'd be like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And which, you know, for all of us, we already knew this going in, but like to see it explained so articulately within the movie, I was like, oh, that's handy for, you know, the people who are going to see this as Oscar bait are going to then walk away with a new kind of perspective on what wrestling is.
I've been defending wrestling pretty much my whole life, and I'm not this person who thinks it's all real. I'm not this person who like puts too much stock or time or effort into thinking about it. I just watch wrestling.
I think this would be an intervention if you thought that way.
Exactly.
This would not be a podcast episode. We'd be like, Jason, we hate to break it to you,
but you suspend disbelief, right? A lot of people make the argument that like when somebody's like, you know, wrestling's fake, right? It's like, yeah, so is like Game of Thrones. Do you think Game of Thrones is real? You know what I mean? It's just an ongoing.
What are you telling me? Khaleesi, the Stormbringer, Breaker of Chains, Mother
she was
of
not
Dragons,
a fictional character.
Real?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
The professional wrestling is a soap opera.
Yeah.
that has been the story of the WWE specifically has been going on since like 1981 or maybe even 79, depending on how far back you go.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I love about it, because I can be a historian about this thing the same way people are like, somebody who knows everything about Spider-Man's lineage and all the spin-offs, right? And they know how they all connect in the fucking multiverse or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what wrestling is to wrestling fans. The wrestling fans that aren't...
we all know that the multiverse of this story is that Kevin Von Erich is actually Adam from Eternia.
Look at him. Yeah. He is Adam from Eternia. Look at his fucking hair.
Anyway, we should get back to the plot because we've only gone through the first sequence of black and white.
That's right. Anyway, fast forward to the 70s, basically.
We get a uncomfortable shot of Zac Efron waking up in his tighty whities, more jacked than any person has ever woken up in their lives. It's crazy. And then he's like immediately like, let's go for a run to his brother. His brother's like, are you fucking nuts, man? You look like you just went for a run and did 1,000 push-ups and ate an entire pig.
Oh, that's another thing in this movie. A lot of eating too.
Yeah.
A lot of eating, a lot of wrestling. See, that's the thing. I'm not worried about talking about too much because there's a lot of like almost full wrestling matches during the movie that we don't need to like get into.
But they're also, like I was saying before, they're also cut up in a way that they're telling you something within the story as well while showing you them.
Yeah, so there's characterization with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the wrestling matches seem longer than they actually are because you're getting something out of it as well. Like this sequence here, the workout sequence in the morning, you're getting a lot of stuff within his life, even though most of it is him just running and doing bench press. It's cut up between, the first fight we see with him. But we also see like little interesting things in the house, and like they show a family portrait. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like I noticed it in my second view. Like nobody in the photo is smiling at all. They have like the most like dead looks on their face, like they're upset, except for Zac Efron. Kind of has like a little bit of like,
because he's such a doofy guy.
And I can't tell if it's just his face or if like he's just like actually not smiling, but the rest of them look like genuinely upset to be in the photo. And like you can picture, after watching the entire movie, you can picture Fritz before the photo being like, remember, no smiles.
No smiling.
Like no smiles.
Showing emotion is weakness. Yeah, we also learn a little bit of stuff about them. Like Michael Von Erich is like, I want to be a musician, and David and Kevin are all in on being a wrestling tag team. But then we get that nice scene of them like going for burgers and going down the river, all holding each other on inner tubes. Like this is a close knit group. And then the next scene that I wrote down was the best scene in the movie, and it's the Kevin trying to do a promo. He keeps stumbling over his words.
Yeah, this scene, yeah.
I think it really shows that he's uncomfortable being the face of the operation in terms of like he's probably better suited to be in his dad's position and training his brothers than he is to be the face, the one who goes on TV and does these ads, because he's uncomfortable and he flubs his lines. And later in the movie, when he's trying to be threatening to race, he can't really quite get the words out, to the point that his brother has to take the mic and do it for him, right? And he gets upset, like, you should have let me talk. But it's like, you were struggling, bro. Like I had to take the mic from you.
Yeah, he can't do the patter. Yeah. That scene in particular, this scene in my background here, I really love it because it's actually one of the few scenes that made me laugh afterwards thinking about it, because the announcer, whenever he says the name Bruiser Brody, it's the most like butter bread voice ever, where there's like the Bruiser Brody, and it's gonna go chasing the next match with Bruiser Brody. It was going in my head for the longest time of just
It's called Marble Mouth, and it's a real thing, right? I get it all the time.
He has it permanently. It's great.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure if that announcer character is directly lifted from a real life announcer, but he absolutely took me to those early days of watching wrestling, and when you would see, and I forget the name of that one guy who did all the interviewing segments for WWF back in the day, WWE.
You might be thinking of Jim Ross.
Yeah, we had like the little mustache.
Mean Gene Okerlund.
Yeah.
So
I think he's passed away at this point too. But
yeah, he
I thought, but like all of the wrestling characters are great in this. I thought I actually really enjoyed. I know you mentioned people picking apart Ric Flair and stuff like that, but
I'll talk about that when we get to it. There's I have a caveat for that. This character, played by Michael Harney. Michael Harney's been in fucking so many things.
Oh,
He plays a character called Bill Mercer.
60 minutes.
And Bill Mercer was a real man.
Mhm.
He passed away. He's still alive. He's 98 years old. Holy fuck!
Wow, good for him. Gosh.
He's been in
98 years. Yeah.
he was a play-by-play man for baseball, football, basketball.
He was a Playgirl playmate. Is that what you said?
Yep. Now at 98.
At 98 years, yeah.
Come see my center for blah, 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 blah.
My
But,
big burly balls on page 17.
I liked this portrayal because even though I didn't know who it was, I didn't know who the person that he was being was. It did represent what that character in wrestling does very well, where he's like,
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on tonight's match? And that's all they have to say. That's all you have to say.
Those ones also seem like they were more meant to be like local, entertainment, right? Like this wasn't going out across all of America.
No,
this was a statewide thing in Texas. Yeah.
I don't want to get fully into the territory system of pro wrestling, but essentially it wasn't like it is now where there's the WWE and some other companies that are slightly smaller and then local independent companies.
Right.
There was a territory system where, like I was saying about how originally be like the big man from one company, one state goes over to the other state. Well, it kind of stayed like that all through the 70s and into the 80s before Vince McMahon came and sort of destroyed the territory system and bought up all the good wrestlers and created one company.
True capitalist.
Exactly. So if you look at somebody like Ric Flair was really big in
The Nature Boy.
He was really big in like the Carolinas. And then Jerry Lawler would be big in Jerry the King Lawler was huge in like Alabama or somewhere like that. I can't remember.
Alabama.
So then they would go over, and they didn't really cover this very well in this movie either, because the whole scene, you know, when it's like a 3-on-3 fight, the three wacky looking guys versus the Von Erichs, that was an epic feud that went on for years and years.
The
Freebirds, that they were from just two different states. And they feuded because of that reason. And the Von Erichs were very old school, traditional wrestlers. The Freebirds were like these rock and roller guys who were like, we're rock and roll. You guys are rednecks. Let's get it on.
The unfortunate reality of this movie is that like the amount of time that they cover of the life of Kevin Von Erich, you can't really get into the nitty gritty of those things.
Yeah.
It would be too shoe leathery, or it wouldn't even be shoe leathery. It would constitute its own entire story arc, like, right? Like if they were to do a mini series of this, then they could do that kind of stuff where you've got like a 3-episode arc where they deal with the Bird Boys or whatever you just called them.
Fabulous Freebirds. Michael P.S. Hayes and the other two.
Yeah. I've forgotten what they look like. I assume they look like Mad Max characters or something.
Essentially.
And
Terry Gordy and Jimmy Garvin. Yeah, those were the other two.
And, you know, that's not something that I would be in any way opposed to, would be like a mini series of like the life of Ric Flair and like how he was a notorious booze hound or whatever and just getting drunk all the time.
He's also asking to get Vince McMahon. He had a lot of issues with.
No way.
Are
you the Nature Boy, the guy with 19 women waiting in his mile-long limo? Come on. He's got lizard skin boots.
It's true. Longest line, shortest ride. Space Mountain. The thing he used to say about himself. And I was like, does that imply that you bang as many chicks as fast as possible? Or are you just like a premature ejaculator and you don't care that people know?
I'm like a hamster in the bed. Watch out.
The answer to the question is like, why not all of the above? All of the above. Woo! All of the above.
Well, I was thinking about this, like, actually, I was thinking about the shortest line, longest line, shortest ride. I was thinking about that literally for like too long the other day, and I was like, what does he mean by that?
Yeah. I think you're right. It just
you're
means
right. It's all of the things that
it's everything you said. Yeah. I remember there was a video game. I think it was called like WCW versus NWO for the N64, and I was not huge into wrestling, but someone bought this game for me, and my friend of the show, Dorog, who usually comments at the end of our episodes, he had this game as well, and for some reason we both just despised Ric Flair as a character without even, I didn't know much about him, but I was like, I fucking
white hair,
hate this guy. No, just even his like that, like the walk that he would do. I'm like, fuck this guy. He's such a piece of shit. So I would go out of my way to kick the shit out of him as Booker T or something. Or whatever.
And do you want to know the worst thing about Ric Flair when it comes to the wrestling element? He's not a great wrestler.
No,
he would get.
Don't let Ric Flair let you hear you say such a thing.
He would say the same thing. It's all a carny ruse. He would get beat up for the whole match, but since he was a heel, he'd do like eye poke, like low blow, and then put them in the figure four and win. He's never really been a face. He's never really been a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't.
Everybody loves a heel, though, right? They keep
people like to get a asshole get beaten up. Is why Ric Flair is so popular.
Yeah.
By the big face, by the big good guy.
And it's always good when a heel turns his heel ways and becomes good, but then betrays them again later.
Yeah. That's in the soap opera aspect of it too.
It's very soap opera and it's great. That's why wrestling is entertaining to me, is like the storylines, right? Like I think I can probably rattle off a few of the arcs within wrestling to you guys, but like I don't know about signature moves or like how long they wrestled for, but I was more interested in like the absurdity of everything and like how cartoonish it was like superhero stuff, right? Where it's like these men exist outside of the realm of humanity. They're all weird and have crazy names.
Well, let me ask you, we'll only do this for me and you, Steve, for this episode since we'll say it.
Yeah,
but just real quick, who are your like favorite wrestlers?
Sting.
You like Sting?
Sting.
Do you know what's funny about Sting? Ric Flair was his his mortal rival and best friend.
Why I hated Ric Flair so much.
And Sting would Ric Flair would turn face, they become a tag team, and then Ric Flair would turn on Sting. It was like it's been happening since the 1970s.
I also like Rey Mysterio Jr.
Okay, that's a good answer.
I like that he was little and he would do crazy like our acrobatic stuff.
Yeah, that's a.
And he wore a cool mask, which was also pretty dope.
Tim.
Well, for me, wrestling, the heyday for me was the era of like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. For me, as far as at this point in my life, the person that I appreciate the most from all that would be Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay.
I mean, like a lot of them, bit of a checkered flag history going on, complicated individual. But as far as a lot of stuff that he would say publicly, he was actually a lot more even keeled, and it wasn't always about just being throttling other people at the time. He would say a lot of motivational things for people. In his personal crop. He would say all sorts of bonkers nonsense, but they all do. But just for him, I would say it personally, he's the one that's endeared the most to me in the long run.
It's a really good answer. For as crazy as Macho Man acted out of that era, he was surprisingly normal. Mm-hmm. And I will bring up an interview where it's not an interview, he's like on a kid's show or something. Mm-hmm. And some kid was like, does the Macho Man cry? And the Macho Man was like, when the Macho Man's alone sometimes, he likes to cry. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel the tears,
but nobody likes a quitter. Take your count of 8 and get back up,
like the cream of the crop.
Like the cream of the crop. Cool. That's a very good. Those are all very good answers. I wasn't expecting that. I
also didn't elaborate on Sting. I just like that he would sometimes like elevate down from the roof with like a baseball bat, and like that he didn't talk. I know he had like a weird sort of like gimmicky thing earlier, and then he turned into essentially the Crow, which was like, okay, now he's a Spawn character.
He was like John Cena, basically. He had like bright colors. He came out in different face paint, like just across the top. He had bleached blonde hair, and he would come out to the ring and be like, "Whoa, it's showtime!" And then the NWO kept invading WCW. And so hard that he was like, "I'm brooding now." So for like months,
I always just assumed that I assumed that what happened to Sting was that he went to go see Zorro with his parents, and then they got shot outside of a movie theater.
And the only thing he remembers is like his mom's pearl necklace bouncing along the cobblestone path.
Yeah. That's how every Sting entrance would happen, is like pearls would rain down from the ceiling.
Murdering the whole audience.
There's pearls in my popcorn.
Yeah, oh my God.
That's great. I didn't even
on these pearls.
I would not have expected you to like know that at all. I know you're of the era, but sometimes a lot of like people of that era who like were tangentially aware of wrestling didn't know who like Sting was. They're like Austin and The Rock, and that's it.
I've never been sort of like sheepish about the fact that I don't really know a lot about wrestling, but I do know enough that like I like it. Like I've always kind of liked it since I was a kid, but I was never like the kid who would go to the playground after the weekend of wrestling events or whatever and be like, oh yeah, I watched that, let's talk about it. I was always like, so who did what? Oh, okay, yeah, cool. And like, you know, I would absorb it, and I played a lot of the video games because they were fun. Games, yeah. And my friend Durak, like he was not super into it, but he was into it enough that I would tangentially sort of like learn things from just him. And I watched a couple of pay-per-view things with like him and his friends when we were kids. So I have enough information that I can probably speak, not as a scholar like you, Jason, but I can still speak to the subject.
Well, it's gonna be a good month. I look forward to talking to everybody that's gonna be on the show about wrestling. Two actual like pretty big wrestling fans, and Jacob and Jake and Sam actually, and then Tim. It sounds like you have that connection to the rock and wrestling era. For me,
like Booker T.
Booker T is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
Can you dig it, sucker? For me, it's CM Punk is my favorite wrestler of all time. That's a very controversial answer. I like him because he sort of encompasses the things I love about wrestling, and that's heels and good talkers and technical wrestlers. He's not that now. He's kind of an old guy now, and there's been some stuff about him, you know, like not like bad, like outside of wrestling stuff. He's just kind of a dickhead in real life.
Yeah.
So he plays a dickhead on screen very well.
Yeah.
He's back in WWE right now, which he said he would never do, which people don't like, but it's shaping up to be an excellent WrestleMania. WrestleMania is this weekend. So this month couldn't have fallen at a better time. But I guess it happens at the same time every year. But that said, CM Punk is like my modern
just like
favorite.
Easter and Transvisibility Day, am I right?
Yeah. Yeesh. Lots of pink.
I've never seen so many Christians not realize that Easter falls on a different day every year in my life. It's wild.
It's the capitalist agenda. Yeah. It's the snowflake agenda.
I can't believe Biden would make this the day that is Transvisibility Day on the day that we celebrate chocolate eggs and Jesus.
And when Jesus came back and shit chocolate everywhere, or a bunny or something. Anyway, just to kind of expound on that a little bit, I grew up loving Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock because the Attitude Era was like really when I walked in. What? Isn't
that his thing?
Yeah, it is. He says what? He says a thing and then says what? And the crowd goes, what?
I remember seeing like a very funny moment where it's like a bunch of wrestlers like run up to a limousine, and then Steve Austin goes, they vandalized their car, or someone says they vandalized their car, and then Steve Austin comes around and he goes, what? And then it turns, and then on the car is spray painted what with a question.
I remember that. That's great.
That's the comedy.
And then The Rock, who went on to be a bigger movie star than he ever was a wrestler. Mm-hmm. He's actually back right now for a little thing. He's wrestling on Saturday night. It's a tag team match, so I don't expect him to put in too much work. But I think that's interesting because he came back with his 1998 heel persona.
I assume that he can't do too much, like in terms of riskiness, because of
that's why he doesn't come back all the time. Yeah, because of insurance and stuff.
He's a famous movie star at this point. Like,
yeah,
people rely on his limbs,
and it can be very, very risky to do a wrestling match because sometimes, as much as there is "quote unquote" planning, there are some improvised events that come up. And sometimes things aren't always executed perfectly, as we see in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, to bring it back to the movie, this is around the point where Fritz gets. We skipped over a little bit, but I just want to bring this up. The reason why this happens, okay, the reason why Kevin doesn't win the title is because Harley Race has to call an audible because Kevin Von Erich takes too long to get back into the ring. So he changes the finish and he keeps the title. That kind of thing still happens to this day, where if you get an injury, if your shoulder comes out, right, because that happens, people just have bad parts. If your knee explodes, you're not going to be able to finish the match. A lot of people try. A lot of people do finish the matches. That's the crazy part.
We also kind of skipped over a large chunk that I think is important as well.
I know, but I just wanted to bring it to what we're talking about here and to what Tim is saying. Like, if The Rock fucking falls on his head and gets a concussion on Saturday night, that might. What does that mean for the Hobbs and Shaw 2 that is inevitably in production?
It means
nothing will change.
It means all those documents that The Rock signed saying you can use AI representation now go into effect.
They go into effect. Okay. Anyway,
our Scorpion King.
The part we skipped over was Kevin meeting Pam, which
I think is a very important part. First thing that I'll say about this sequence is I think that Don't Fear the Reaper should be retired from all filmmaking
or put in every movie.
No, it needs to get the fuck out of here. It's in too many movies, and I get it. It's the 70s. Fuck off. I get kind of like touchy with musical choices in movies that are period pieces sometimes when I'm like, okay, maybe choose something a little bit more obscure.
Look, it's 1960s and I'm in a helicopter and I'm going to the Vietnam War, and if I don't hear All Along the Watchtower, why are we doing this?
If I don't hear the Rolling
Creedence Clearwater Revival,
some folks are born.
I was thinking about that with specifically the use of Don't Fear the Reaper, where it was a little entry level. It wasn't too thoughtful, and you could probably get something a little more appropriate.
Basic. Yeah. And I mean, I get Don't Fear the Reaper. It's a very surface level song about like not being afraid of your future and not being afraid to take chances and blah blah. And like it is appropriate for what's going to happen in the sequence following it. Yeah. But there are probably 1 million songs of the era that you could choose that would be a little bit more. It wouldn't make you think of other movies. That's the main issue, is when you put something in that is so well known, or SNL skits for that much.
And that's a good point. Anything, and I say this about video games too, anything that takes me out of that frame of mind, that then I remember, oh yeah, I'm just some guy watching a movie right now, and I'm not thinking about the movie anymore. Same with video games.
Having with Oppenheimer, when I was talking about those extended, like sort of almost like music video sequences, is you forget, oh, I'm supposed to be engrossed in this movie, and I'm supposed to be forgetting that I am a human. But then you're right back in your seat, being like, oh, Oppenheimer is seeing crazy shit again when he's trying to sleep. Oh, Steve's butt is numb and he maybe needs to pee now. I shouldn't be thinking that during the movie.
But does your butt talk to you, Steve? But yeah, they get into the match, and then afterwards, when she's like making an approach to him, and you get to kind of see that innocence in Kevin, that like, and it starts to explain that like, oh, he's just been taking care, not just of families really, but specifically his brothers, that this has been his focus, and he's been taking care of them through wrestling, where his dad has been traumatizing them through wrestling. He's been taking care of them through wrestling.
Yeah. To the point that first she asks, she's like trying to hit on him, but that didn't happen in the 70s. Girls hit on guys in the 70s, and he's like, I don't know. And she's like, did your parents teach you?
Were you alive in the 70s? You don't know what the fuck happened back then.
I'm sure that it was a very misogynistic era.
Yeah, but I'm sure that people like this, little sweethearts who didn't know how to talk to girls, probably existed as well.
I'm getting to that. She's like, didn't your mom ever tell you? Didn't your family ever tell you how to ask questions? And he's like, well, I guess not. And then when they're at dinner, when they're on their date a minute later, he literally says to what Tim was saying, like, I want my, we get married. You can have your practice. All our families can come live in our farm
Buy a
with us. And
ranch,
she's
we'll
like,
all live on the ranch together.
maybe not that. That
It
seems
is like a very, it is like a very blue sky little boy mentality, right? Like,
Yeah,
my
it's a
brothers
step
can
away
have their
from living in our
families,
tree
they can
fort.
have
Yeah.
it is not that far either, though. It's like, well, I was picturing us all living in a tree fort, but like we could live on the grass. I suppose.
No girls allowed, but you can come in, wife.
You can come in because you're my wife.
You're
You're not a girl anymore. You're a
one
woman.
wife per family.
Yeah.
I think at the end of this, I mean, it is a very cute and nice sequence, and it does contain that the analogy of like promotions and all that stuff that we were talking about earlier. Which so I do think overall it's a really strong scene. But then at the end, he tells the story about how his older brother died of something. I can't remember. I don't think they say.
They don't. I don't know what it's in the movie. In reality, it's It's like a electrical shock and drowning that happened by accident in Niagara Falls, I believe.
Wow.
Okay. I was
is
like about to
5
say
years
he
old.
probably drowned or something because that's so traumatizing to anybody to see someone drown. But then she goes across the table and gives him a hug, and he gives her a hug, and all I could think was, I don't think I'd want somebody to hug me while they're eating ribs with their bare hands.
He's leaving like barbecue sauce handprints on her back.
They had barbecue hands prints on each other's backs.
After they kissed and they go back and they both have barbecue sauce all over their face.
There's like a string of barbecue sauce connecting between them. But at the same time, like he also doesn't know how to process her coming to hug him. That this kind of physical affection, especially in public, is something he's not accustomed to.
But he kind of goes in for the kiss, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rag on Zac Efron in this movie because like he obviously went through some sort of accident, but like his face is like so much here.
It's very different. I think in combination with his bowl cut, his Prince Adam bowl cut.
Because I saw him in that new Sticky Badicki or whatever the fuck that movie is called.
I couldn't tell you the name of that movie.
Ricky Stanicki.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like. I think the haircut is doing a lot of the framing of his jaw here, and just like makes it look like she's kissing like a bag of beef jerky or something.
It's to the point where like we were wondering, did he get surgery or did he get aesthetic put on?
He had several surgeries because he had an accident or something, right? Which is why I don't want to like rag on it because it's like, oh man, he had a serious. It's like when Mark Hamill, between movies had an accident and he didn't look the same, and everyone was like, "What happened to Mark's face?" And people
I forgot about that.
Maybe just
did he get into a car crash or something, and then he came back with that weird chin?
Yeah, in between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, he had
Zac Efron
vehicular accident. Oh no, he like slipped and like cracked his face on like a fountain or something in his house.
Yeah, in his house. Yeah.
Oh, I fell in my fountain.
That was the thing. You're like,
on the fountain in my home.
Porcelain fountain of yourself.
I tripped over my pile of money and hit my head on my solid gold fountain.
Yeah.
But no, it sounded like a bad injury, and it was also a matter of in the healing process. There's like actual physical therapy that he had to do for his jaw muscles, and it led to kind of overgrowing the jaw muscles as well. So that's why it's like noticeably, it's not the sharp jaw that he had in his High School Musical days.
Yeah. And
it happens.
Once you're used to it, it's not like jarring or anything. You're just like, oh yeah, that's just what he looks like.
Yeah.
But like, so many celebrities have these things. Like think about what's his name? The guy from Mickey Rourke. I was about to say the guy from Iron Man 2. He's in a lot of other stuff. He's in the movie we're doing next week.
This month.
Yeah.
But anyway, he looks like He-Man. He puts barbecue handprints all over his future wife, and then goes home and he talks to. This is where his father reveals to him that he's going to get the big fight against Mance Rayner or whatever.
It's like, I never ascended, but you will.
Harley Racist or whatever his name is.
Harley Race, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to show you guys like a side by side of Harley Race because it's crazy.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the guy who plays Harley Race just looks like every sort of like guy that you would work with in a warehouse at some point. Like it's not like Ric Flair had a very particular look. Like his nose was kind of like hawkish and his chin was pointed and like I would say that if you were to take Ric Flair and shrink him down and make him very gaunt, he would look like a classic witch from like a
very, very very sharp features on him in real life.
Look at this. Who is the real Harley Race in this image?
I mean, I know which one is the real one based on the fact that one is a snapshot from the movie we just watched.
But chat, which one's the real one?
Which one's the real one? Isn't that crazy though? For how bad like the look of Ric Flair was, I'll talk about what I like.
I don't know, man. You just showed me a picture of two very different people, and like I don't think that it's that much of a difference.
You don't think that's a very good?
No, I think they look like very different. They have very similar noses, and that's.
I think the nose is the worst part, personally. Harley Race on the right.
I think the eyes are the worst part, and the hair.
Well, I mean, okay, well.
Anyway, what do you want? A duplicate? Jason is all for AI absorption and just recreating everybody digitally. I think you want to have like a de-aged Han Solo, de-aged Flair just in your fucking Iron Claw movie. Like,
I thought it was a really good representation of Harley Race. His mannerism. Harley Race was an amazing wrestler. He harkened in this era of like the mid 70s. There were a lot of these guys that looked like the Von Erichs who were like a bit smaller. They were a bit more like fast, you know. Yeah. There's that scene where he's running the ropes. It's called running the ropes when you run back and forth. Sorry. Yeah, Steve's like, no, you're not telling me that. I know that already. But wrestlers were getting faster during this era. And Harley Race was like, I'm going to punch you in the face and beat you with my face punch.
Yeah, I one of the things I do like about this sort of like compilation is, again, like we've got the music that's, you know, it starts at like a slow rumble and it starts with those low brass instruments and becomes more and more triumphant, but at the same time ominous. And you're like, this is completely pulling from like where wrestling came from, which was Greek mythology, Roman Olympians, and the way that classic cinema represented those things through music. And they're taking that element from early cinema and using it here, and it's so fucking good. Like it makes you just like get amped up for the terror. The curse is coming. But the other thing that I really like is that we've got Zac Efron, who is chiseled and again looks like he's been carved out of soapstone or whatever by an artist. And then you've got Harley Race, he looks like a fucking bag of milk. And you're like, oh, look at this.
An extremely strong bag of milk. Let's be real.
I'm not saying he's not strong. I'm just saying that like the difference between the two is wild. Like it's crazy.
I fought a few bags of milk in my time, and I got to say, but that whole body type thing though has been like a thing for wrestling for quite a while, where they have, you know, people that look like they're a featherweight, and they become wiry and unpredictable in the ring, and then people who are just big bruisers, and like, you know, you've got what was his name, Kong,
King Kong Bundy.
King Kong Bundy and Andre the Giant, who has a little appearance in this movie, interestingly enough.
I'm narrating a YouTube channel about wrestling, and I had to do a huge thing on King Kong Bundy, actually.
There you go. Recently. Yeah. So, and especially if you, depending on how you want to personify the heroes and the heels, where, with Ric Flair, it's not just that, that he's got the attitude, but like the look of him is kind of almost aristocratic in a weird way, especially with the platinum blonde hair.
Do you know what's weird? I can't find. I think people's problem is that all the pictures that they're comparing him to are Ric Flair at the earliest from the 90s.
I think that the consensus between me and Tim is that we don't care if somebody looks like how they're supposed to look. We just, as long as we care about the performance and what the movie, if it is servicing the movie, who gives a fuck if they look?
And the consensus for me is that I wish that Ric Flair looked a little bit more like Ric Flair. But that said,
Does that ruin the movie for you when he's doing a good job as like when he is he not hyping you up when he's, or are you just focusing on his nose not being right? Or?
No, I'll talk about Ric Flair when we get to it. I'm just trying to find a picture right now of Ric Flair.
I'm ready to fight in the ring about this later.
Well, let me tell you something, Mean Gene.
I got lizard skin eyelashes. I got lizard skin fingernails.
Eyelashes.
Why are you like mostly lizard skin, man?
I got lizard skin.
He's a secret member of Cobra.
Yeah.
But the wrestling scenes in general in this movie, they're all really good, and all the angles are often from like ringside audience level, which is a great way for, in a movie sense, to kind of put you into that era. That like you're almost like feeling the filth of the floor kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's something I really enjoyed about
smell
this
the
film.
sweat. I don't know if you've ever been to like a wrestling match before, Tim, but it is pretty exciting. Like even if you don't like wrestling, if you're there and you're in it, and people are getting tossed out near you, and you're hearing skin hit floor and stuff, like it is quite exciting. You
get kind of wrapped up in the moment for sure.
Bring Tim to Super Kicks, April 26th, my birthday.
You don't forget that it's staged and that it's written, but you do get more invested in it because you're there and you're watching it and you're like, I like the cut of this guy's jib. I don't know his backstory, I don't know his mother's name, and I don't give a shit about what he is, but I want him to win. Like I get it, and this movie captures that feeling as well, being low. Like there's not a lot of high angles in this, and the high angles you get are usually from like the seats way in the back, like the bad seats or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's when they're coming in and you're meant to be like
in general. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're being showered in cheers. And it's I think the purpose of that is because you're supposed to be cheering, right? Like it's supposed to feel like the cheers are coming from you being showered down onto them, right? Like when Ric Flair first enters the arena, even though he's a villain and like the boos are coming, it's like you're supposed to be like, I'm booing too from up here in the nosebleed section.
Yeah.
I think that every time the camera is in the ring, from when they're in these packed seat events to when they're in the small gym events to when they're in the intimate personal training sessions, like it's all accomplished. Like everything they do is perfect. Like I can't imagine how they would film it better than how they did in every sequence. The part where Carrie is trying to retrain himself again after losing his foot is like pretty heart-wrenching, and it's all one long shot just slowly pushing in on it. It's so good, man. This movie's good. I gotta say, this movie is good. Anyway, let's move on through the story again. I keep getting us off rails.
So yeah, during this we talked about how he takes the bump. Harley Race kind of calls an audible and gets DQ'd himself. A DQ in professional wrestling always means the champion does not lose their title, unless storyline is like, you always get yourself DQ'd, and this Sunday, if you get yourself DQ'd, I've got it sanctioned, then I win the belt. That happens from time to time. Also, did you like my promo there? I thought that was a pretty good promo. But the thing that I noticed here is harkening back to earlier in the movie where Kevin Von Erich can't cut a promo to save his life. Michael, is that his name? No, David Von Erich gets in the ring and cuts a fucking epic promo saying like, you can't do this to us. We got a vendetta to settle. And you can see on Kevin's face that he's like, oh man, I just lost this match.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. And I can't get my words together. And now this guy.
It reminds me of like, obviously it's not the same thing, but like when you're playing like D&D or like in any kind of improv moment, right? Where you're supposed to be able to compose yourself and come up with something on the spot that's compelling and interesting and either scary or, harrowing or whatever it is. and you can't quite formulate the words and someone else steps in, sometimes it can be the best feeling ever as the person who can't find the words. And sometimes it's like, if only I had a couple more seconds, I could have figured out what to say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like that in real life.
Yeah. Like if you're at a business meeting or anytime. Yeah. Like,
or on this podcast, sometimes I'll start talking without knowing where I'm going. And then I hit a wall. And
then you should let the people who know what they're about to say
Steve
something.
just starts talking and I'm like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But Fritz comes in. He gives Kevin the gears for fucking up the spot. That's what it's called in wrestling. I know what they were trying to convey there. When he got suplexed on the cement, he got, I think, what's known as a stinger, and that's where basically you land on your spine in a way that makes like half your body go numb. Like he couldn't move. It wasn't that he just had the air knocked out of him.
Like a state of shock, yeah.
Yeah, I think his half of his body went numb for a minute. Yeah. And this is where it transitions over to the brother that they had talked about a little bit, and arguably the biggest star of the whole family, even though his run was very short. Kerry Von Erich, who was an Olympian. He was a shot put thrower. He was destined for the Olympics. Unfortunately, though,
he was elected prom queen of his prom, and he got a bunch of blood dumped on him. Did that happen? Wrong movie? Wrong character?
Sorry. That'd be like one of those movie mashups where you like take two movies and make it awful and call it Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah, but I think Don't Fear the Reaper was in that movie too.
Probably.
Yeah, she was the Reaper. It is absolutely wild to me that the Olympics got canceled because of the Cold War.
No, the Olympics didn't get canceled.
Sorry, US, not the entire Olympics.
But the Americans
pulled out of the Olympics.
No, they pulled out of the Olympics because Ric Flair was too sexy, and this is the image they had.
Yeah. Right on.
Damn, look at all that lizard skin.
He's mostly lizard skin. Fun fact about Ric Flair is he survived a plane crash, and he used to be big fat guy. He kind of looked like this, and when he came back, he looked like the Ric Flair we all know now. Slightly less big. Fun fact. Was that fun?
I had fun.
Yeah, but yes, as Steve was saying, the U.S. is like, we will not go to Russia. Jimmy Carter is like, we will not go to Russia.
Yeah, for the Moscow Olympics, yeah.
And unfortunately for the Von Erich family, that's kind of all they had. And Fritz has a little meltdown.
That seems like it could be part of a curse, but that's just like the American curse, which is that America has way too much pride in itself. Like, why would you not send your Olympians who've been training for years? I understand, and I wasn't around at the time to feel the sort of like geopolitical echo that it would have on the American people and what most people would think about it. But the Olympics is sort of like a thing that exists on a global scale, that to pull out for something like that, I don't understand it. Maybe it was for security reasons. Maybe it was to be like, we're America the strong. I don't know.
It was like right before the Cold War. There was a lot of tension.
No, I get that, but I'm like,
the Iron Veil.
It was in direct opposition to the idea that they were the Soviet Union was occupying Afghanistan at the time. Right. And so there was, because of those elements and the stalemate involved with it, that it didn't, according to the Carter administration, it wasn't in good spirit to participate in the Olympics, which is supposed to be a peaceful event being hosted in Moscow when they were occupying a country. So, it's complicated. And the Olympics have always been a complicated thing, even when like Berlin before World War II hosted the Olympics, and there were countries that were boycotting that at the time as well.
Yeah, so I guess it's like an echo of that, sort of like we have to make a stand here.
Yeah, it's hard to separate the politics from the Olympics in that sense. But yeah,
what's everyone's opinion here? Should they or should they not?
I have no horse in the race of the Olympics, but
Except for
Well,
that
I mean,
horse
it's like
that
an
you
opposite,
sponsored for
the
horse
opposite
racing.
of right now, where
Except for Tim the horse. Yeah.
the U.S. is like, yeah, pro-Israel when Israel is genociding on a public stage. It's like the opposite, where they're like, yes.
Well,
Israel,
let's not get into real world.
chill out a
politics
bit,
now.
but
Yeah.
we see
I'm more
that.
comfortable talking about politics that happened in the 1970s.
That's
and
fair.
80s.
Yeah.
That's
But,
fair. I'm now
but-
canceled. That's my weekly cancellation, ladies and gents. That's canceled for saying, ladies and gentlemen.
But
Bye.
but for Fritz though, he takes it as a personal slight, as he
Yeah.
does everything. As
I
the-
took that personally.
yeah, and like for Carrie, yeah, like he's looking for some structure in his life, and unfortunately, it's this dysfunctional operation on the go that's his only other recourse in the movie. So.
And he has nowhere else to go but back to the farm. And you know what that means? If you go back to Fritz's house, you become a professional wrestler and you try to win the grandest
In this
title
house, we
Yeah.
only wrestle all the
and
time.
win the biggest titles. We
I'm
don't.
surprised you didn't make them wrestle for like bacon and stuff in the morning.
Sorry.
That's too low a station for a world champion wrestler.
Yeah.
And they wear the bacon as a belt when they're done.
The last piece of bacon, you know the rules, honey. The last piece of bacon has to pin me to the ground.
Oh, you mean in their own home?
Yeah,
Oh,
in their
I
own
thought you meant
home.
like at the market.
No, like,
You got to use that bacon grease on yourself before we wrestle. But but after Carrie comes home, they have their football match, and of course, the dad is barking at them the whole time about what they should and shouldn't be doing for football. That really brought me back to some childhood stuff where, like, there are some people I know that this reminds me of.
are you talking about childhood trauma? Yeah.
Thankfully, not for me personally. My parents weren't too invested into sports, so.
Yeah.
But I saw plenty of kids go through the ringer from their parents for stuff like that, and
My parents tried to get me into every single sport known to mankind. Never tried to get me into like piano or anything or like art. Anyway,
I did do karate, and my dad tried to find a way for me to do it for free. So, anyway, that was the most the
he just
conversation.
brought over
Went.
boards and was like, "Chop these in half, Tim."
Oh, I found an actual image of Tim learning kung fu for free.
Yeah, that's it exactly. That was before the beard kicked in.
Yeah.
Before my plane crash. But
Before we move on from it, the football stuff, it also again kind of plays into him always having this sort of narrative or like ability to string together a speech at any moment where he's
Like a
like
football
commentating the football game while they're playing and then being like, like the Nebraska Bull Boys called me up last week and they said, why the hell do they have it? And he's like saying all this, sort of inspirational baloney that means absolutely nothing, which to me made me realize like, oh, this is how he is all the time. No matter what's happening, he's always going to be like, I once met an old woman in an alley and she told me this tale and it was all about the Von Buren boys and how they'd be like, he could just like string together anything at any point for whatever reason in order to manipulate people around him. And it just keeps going and going and going. And I remember when we saw it in theater, I was like, this guy's like kind of an abrasive prick, but I get it. Like he's also trying to be fatherly. But then at that moment, I was like, oh, he's also like overbearing in the way that you would be like, shut the fuck up, Dad. Like, how many beers have you had today? You clawed old fuck. The iron claw needs some grease.
Well, like when Carrie first walks in and he has his quick embraces with his mother and father, and it's when the brothers are all together again.
You feel
and that's when he's home, and that's when he's with his family finally. Like these two immediate people that gave him life, like they're kind of incidental in a weird way, as far as his sense of home and family is concerned.
And like we're about to get into the Maura Tierney stuff as well, where like she's already had some pretty good moments in the movie, good in terms of performance. I think that she's probably maybe the best in this movie.
I was gonna say I hope that she wins something out of this because her performance in this was like devastating. It was very realistic.
Yeah,
and she's been a good actor for a long time. I don't know if I've seen her really get her flowers.
I don't know either. Yeah, but like I mean, in this movie, she's one of the. It's like a classic character actor thing where she vanishes into the performance where you leave thinking about a bunch of the other performances, but you don't think about that one, and then you rewatch it and you're like, oh, I forgot that you're maybe the best part of this movie. Like you glue everything together in a way that will go unnoticed without having people watch it with that sort of appreciative eye.
It's almost, yeah, that's how good. I get what you're saying. That's a really interesting way to look at it. Like when characters are so good that like they're almost like this sounds bad, but like a set piece. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. I mean that in like you're not worried about their performance because it's so good. Where Fritz von Erich comes in and you're like, oh God, what the fuck is he?
You're like, oh,
now?
This is a cartoon, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that way though, she is a person who has been made subservient to all this. Where like when you meet her at the beginning of the movie, she's saying her protests about buying the new car and what are we gonna do, and then her scene in that kind of ends with her like, I'm just gonna keep my thoughts to myself.
Yeah,
and you get kind of the impression that like it's a downward slope for her from there as far as her the value of her opinion as far as the direction of rearing this family goes.
It is weird because you get a couple of moments before this where earlier in the movie Zac Efron goes to her to be like, dad's being too hard on brother number 4 or whatever. You need to say Mike, yeah, you need to say something. And she's like, no, like I'm not going to say anything. He's not going to listen to me if I do. She doesn't say it in all these words. This is like sort of the intent of the scene, but it's like you get the idea that he will listen to her on certain things, but other things she understands that like he has made his mind up and there's absolutely no way that we can change the way he's going to act on these things. So like in this sequence that we get at this point in the movie where they're having dinner at a picnic table outside, everything is picturesque, beautiful. It's like sunset. It's the food looks amazing. Everybody's having a really nice time.
Yeah.
And then the conversation shifts to a little bit about their past, which you don't get a lot of in this movie at all. And you learn that Fritz is like an accomplished musician, like
classically trained musician. Yeah,
he knows how to play, and a clarinet of all instruments, which is like
you should be like a tambourine or a drum for him, but
drummer, or a tuba player.
Did we say tuba at the same time just there?
You're like, you look like a strong man. You could hold a tuba.
You could hold a full tuba.
But he plays a clarinet, which is like typically a very dexterous and light and beautiful instrument. And it's almost impossible to imagine this fucking blockhead playing
this thick-necked maniac playing a clarinet. And then he dismisses it as if he's embarrassed by it because he would never make any money out of it. He would never make any kind of how he views success out of it.
Yeah. Well, what he says is like, I realize there's no future in music, and I was right. And you're like, oh God.
And then Michael's like, well, I have a gig tonight. Maybe I could go to my gig. And they're like, the parents are like, absolutely not.
Well, they're interested at first until he says it's on a. He also says that he's in a quartet from school, which I love so fucking much that he's calling his euphemism, his garage band a quartet. That's so fucking funny. And then she's like, oh, no, not happening. Sorry. And then that's when you realize that like dad is not all encompassing power. He realizes like he might have said yeah, but he hears mom saying no, and he's like, no, your mom said no, and that's the end of that. And then he starts fucking typewritering his piece of corn, like
but
more eating in the movie.
In the true fashion of every movie where there's a conversation like that, cut immediately to them sneaking out. The thing that I love about them pushing the car out of the driveway and then starting it like down the road. My dad tells stories about doing that to sneak out.
Your dad's one of the Van Buren boys.
My dad's one of the Van Buren boys. Realistically, in movies they don't have that attention to detail. Like, and that's such a uniquely 1970s experience. I would imagine. My dad also tells a story about going to do that, and as he was climbing out his window, he like had to step down onto his parents' like windowsill, and sneaking out one night, he stepped down onto his dad's head. And his dad just like took his foot and like just pushed him back up.
And we will never speak of this again.
And we will never speak of this again.
That's funny. I do like that moment as well because it like, you know, it just gives a little bit of character to everything, right? It's one of those like you don't have to put that in there, but it sprinkles in just a bit of like, oh, sneaky behavior. This isn't the first time they've done this because they probably tried to sneak out before, started the car in the driveway.
Yeah,
they got caught, and
and it's the four brothers taking care of each other and watching out for each other. We're gonna indulge your interests. We're gonna see your music show, and the song that he plays. I don't know if it's like I couldn't recognize it as a real pop song from the real world, but they're singing about how they kind of want this to be this way forever.
Yeah,
and it's just
great for kind of.
Yeah, because like the rest of the movie is gonna get a little rough.
This is kind of the turning point because
spoiler alert.
It's basically Hamlet. What I like about this sequence though is it's showing this happens later in the movie too when they're on the road, but it's Kevin sitting in a chair and just watching his brothers do all kinds of crazy shit. And this time it's pretty mundane. He's watching his brother play on the stage. He's carried to a keg stand push-ups, and he's like, that seems like it's troublesome, or could be, and it's very heartwarming. The next time that Kevin's in the corner watching, there's like he sees like his brother doing cocaine and getting into a fight, and one of his brothers is dead. You know what I mean? So
he also says like, so what do you think about us? We're a lot, right? Like he says to his future wife, and she's like, I love your family so much. And all I could think was, no, yeah, he's right. They're a lot. If I saw a man do a keg stand and then immediately rip his shirt off, I'd be like, no, thank you. I'm not going to interact with these guys at this party. Not at all.
Yeah, might be.
Push-ups were insane to me.
Yeah. And that might be like run of the mill for old Teja from Texas. But yeah, I remember looking at it like, this feels like a lot. Who's going to clean up that spill?
Also, in real life, I guess Jeremy Allen White like had real alcohol problems and stuff. That's why he was so good at playing lip.
I've been to university parties that have this element to it, where you know there is like a weird jockish person who will do a keg stand, and I've done a keg stand before, but I didn't do push-ups on it, and I definitely didn't rip my shirt off.
You weren't jacked all the way to the future and back.
Yeah,
on the roids.
Jack to the future is what they
Jack to the
future. They called me Jack to the Future Part 2.
He's so ripped he went back in time.
Yeah, and then old Kevin Von Erich loses his little virginity to his little girly friend, and she's like, "What? You've never done this before?" And he's like, "I don't really know anything."
He's like, "Well, I mean, I've never done anything before." Really.
Lost his little virginity. I have a little virginity left to lose.
And she's like, she like gets on him, and he's like, immediately.
I've been wrestling since I was 12. I lost a little bit of my virginity at some point.
Yeah. I took a body slam right to the butthole once.
It had never happened before. They call it a butthole slam. It's in the books now.
I think I should probably call the police.
Yeah.
Anyway, so because
I mean,
don't fear the
scene. It's a good little scene. Like, you know, I like that it's in silhouette. It's really well shot.
It's not gratuitous or something. Yeah.
No, like again, like I watched Oppenheimer, and there's like this weird sort of like sex stuff that happens in it that it's not bad. And there's like certain moments that I'm like, oh, this is really well done. I haven't seen a sex scene done like this before. But then there's also stuff where I'm like, they just wanted to show boobs here, I think. They just really needed to show boobs.
To get the guys back.
You knew that Oppenheimer saw boobs.
To get the guys back who went to that with their girlfriends. And the guys who weren't like Christopher Nolan freaks who went with their girlfriends.
No. I don't mean that they needed to show boobs in the movie.
Oh, okay.
They needed to show that Oppenheimer the man saw boobs, because it seems so weird that they have to make a connection with the audience. He saw boobs just like you, kind of thing.
Okay. I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet.
I don't mean it was like supposed to be titillating for the audience. I mean, it was supposed to be like you connect with Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So the thing that because they already had Don't Fear the Reaper. Naturally, they also have to show it's the 70s by playing Tom Sawyer by Rush.
Wait, no, you're skipping over the looming cloud of Ric Flair. Ding, ding, ding. When his dad is in the office, like watching the Ric Flair fight, the fight that Erich was supposed to have, and then Ric Flair wins, and it's like Ric Flair is the winner, and then that fucking horn music, the gladiatory music, is playing again, like, and he like looks over, and like the whole time I'm thinking they're hyping up Ric Flair so well in this movie to be this like ultimate villain, but every time they do it, the dad is there. The dad is there. The dad is the villain. The dad is the villain the whole time.
Is that where they show Ric Flair do the amazing promo on screen?
No, that's much later.
Okay.
Later, this is just a fight. He's catching the tail end of the Ric Flair fight on TV in his office at the gym or whatever it is.
Yeah. The Sportatorium.
The Sportatorium,
That's
which
what
is
it was
like,
actually called.
I know, but it's like one of the funniest words I've ever heard in my life. Like,
very famous arena.
Yeah.
Come on down to the Sportatorium. We got wrestling.
It sounds like something from Futurama, like
yeah.
I've got to get down to the old Sportatorium.
I parked my car at the Carnasium. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we're getting on. Okay.
It's mine is not for rent.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is a good montage too, because it's still fine. Like, it starts with Michael doing what he loves. He gets the new record. He's got the sound system. But during this is when you start to see the cracks forming in Kerry, they're having bloody hardcore matches in the ring, and then he's fighting people and going nuts at bars as well, because I think they're supposed to be like on tour here. This is also where the stuff with the Freebirds is happening. Very insane time in wrestling. One of the first wrestling booms was basically the Von Erichs versus they were on TV all over the states. Territory wrestling was sort of bleeding out of the territories at this time because this feud was because Ric Flair. They don't cover Jerry Lawler in this movie, but Jerry Lawler and then these six men were just ripping it up, and they were having these like the proto hardcore matches that were so popular in the 90s, like the blood and the weapons and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Kerry Von Erich is bleeding for about 8 minutes during this sequence, which I liked. I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
Great representation. Then they win the big 6-man belts. They win the 6-man titles.
So is this where he gets his internal rupture or whatever, his intestinal rupture?
Must be.
Well, that's David, but that's not until towards the wedding.
David is chosen after this. They win the 6-man titles, and then
going to Japan. Yeah,
for it's just like I'm choosing you now to be the champion. And Kevin Von Erich is sitting there like, wait, how did we skip over me? And Fritz is like, my new favorites go like this. It goes you, and then Kevin, and then
the leaderboard update. Yeah. But the lead up to that though is actually my favorite part of the movie, outside of guys saying Bruiser Brody. But my favorite part of the movie is after they win their 3-on-3 match, and Mike joins them on stage and he's congratulating them, and then Fritz comes on to do the patter at the end, and
that's when he cuts the promo in front of everybody about his favorites.
Yeah, and announces that David is going to be going for the World Championship title, and seeing the reactions of the four brothers and these divisions building and these problems developing and the insecurities of them, because like they're not even able to, after he kind of announces like, any problems, and no sir, no
problem here. Like
and seeing how like sheepish Mike becomes, just like I don't want to go do the wrestling, and like his shoulders, you can see him like shrinking in, and looking down and looking away from the audience and not making eye contact with the brothers. And it's the slow shot building in, going closer and closer to them, seeing that tension build. I'm not even too sure if the music's playing, but it wouldn't surprise me if that intense horn section playing again for the dad talking. It's a great scene, and between them going out to the university party and then to that, like that's where like things can tip over into this downfall for the family. That like from here it's going to get rough, and this is that little tipping point where like the dad is really taking the wheel and turned this family van into the ditch.
Yeah, like the O'Doyles when they slip on that banana peel and then the truck goes over the O'Doyle.
I thought he was doing like a classic, like if you don't shut up, I'm going to turn this car around. He just turns it. He does a 360.
Yeah,
and floors it.
The next scene is Kevin gets married. It's kind of some sweet stuff going on. I thought it was very nice that the parents, Fritz has another kind of real moment where he's like, there's no kids in the house right now, and she's like, I'm DTF. And but then Kevin goes into the bathroom and he hears somebody puking and he's like, oh, you're having too much fun, are you? Who's in there? And then it's David fucking with the old, this is the modern version of, in old movies when somebody coughs into a handkerchief and they show blood. It in its blood and they look around like, ugh. There's blood everywhere, all over the toilet bowl.
Yeah. I mean,
so over the top.
I remember thinking it during, I might even have said something to who I think I was sitting. Was I sitting?
You were sitting next to me. Yeah.
No.
Okay. No, I think I was sitting next to Tim because maybe I was between both of you guys. I think I was in the middle, and because I would whisper things to you guys throughout just to try and get a chuckle here and there. But I think I was like, you should probably have a doctor check that out. Like, if you have that much blood in your barf, go to a hospital immediately. Am I wrong? Like,
yeah, and
no, don't go to Japan, especially where you can't speak Japanese.
To a doctor.
Go to a hospital. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He's like, nah, just I got a little stomach bug.
Yeah.
It's like, no, something inside you is.
No, it looks like you swallowed a knife. Yeah. You might have swallowed a knife. Did you?
Yeah. Did you swallow a bag of thumbtacks?
But this is something like, I know that there is some truth to that, where like the at least announced cause of death, I forget the name of it, but it was something to do with those deep ruptured stomach issues.
Yeah.
What necessarily causes that? I think there was some people throwing on some suspicion in real life that like, was it complicated with substance abuse or who knows what? But the fact that like he's trying to hide it or trying to downplay it and keep on going is kind of speaking to the dysfunction of the family.
I also think that, like, we talked about it earlier where, they omitted an entire brother, right?
Yeah. And I will say about all of this, like these timelines and the realities of all these things, they kind of streamlined it all. Like, I'm pretty sure that Carrie may have had a family by this point.
Yes.
David may have also had a family by this point. They just kind of like wanted, and this last act of the movie is very much like something happens, where the first part of the movie is a lot of like world building, giving background about the family, and then right after the Tom Sawyer part, it's like tragedy. You know what I mean? It's interesting way to tell the story, but as you were saying earlier, Steve, to really cover this whole thing, you need to either do a podcast about it or you need to have a 19-part miniseries about the Von Erich.
Well, yeah, that's legacy. What I was gonna say is like, whether it be substance abuse or not, I don't think at that point in the story for a movie it doesn't necessarily matter. He's dead. But
the director actually, when he was asked about that, he said the reality is so much worse than what is in the movie.
Yeah,
you can't make a movie like that.
No.
Right.
And functionally, as you were saying, that like the audience would just be like walking out.
But then that's why you have moments right after this, right? Or not even right after, within this same scene. There's like a surprisingly healthy amount of introspection that Kevin has in himself, right? He apologizes for getting upset. He realizes that like all he really cares about is the Van Buiten boys, the Von Erichs.
Mm.
He is trapped by his dad's psychosis, his dad's overbearing nature. They're trapped in the Iron Claw, basically. But like, he has enough self-awareness and introspection to look at it and be like, I need to take a step back. It's fine. You be the world champion. and I get to focus on my family now, and I'm gonna maybe make it a little bit better for my family than it was for us, which
And
is
also-
like a sprinkle of hope in this
Yeah.
very bleak story.
Just real quick, Tim, what's funny about your new setup is, are your eyes blue in real life?
Yeah, more or less.
You know,
Yeah.
the way that the light is hitting them, it looks like you're on Spice right now. You have the Dune Spice eyes. I wanted to say it before I forgot, and I wanted to bring a little bit of levity to the horrible darkness we're about to go in to, starting with what Steve was just talking about.
Before we put our hands into that Gom Jabbar, that is the Iron Claw.
Which is also like the Dune popcorn bucket. They call it the Iron
Sandworm fuck bucket, as they've been calling it on the internet.
Boy, oh
People
boy.
want to fuck that thing.
Did someone call it a fuck bucket?
I called it that. Let's go.
That's it. Oh, for me, that's any bucket. But no,
Yeah, fuck a bucket. Yeah, thank you. Laws too, please.
But to the point of like the Iron Claw, like you actually see in the training moment there. I mean, not to backtrack too much, but the dad again teaching or going over the lesson of the Iron Claw, like, no, you got to put pressure on him. I got to feel the pressure, and he does it to David, where he's like pushing him down the mat, and David's asking him to stop, and like another, where the wrestling is representing what's thematically going on in the movie, which just speaks to how well thought out this is, which is why it's so surprising for a new director to be so well realized in his vision for this.
Yeah. I also think a lot about how much damage can you do to somebody by grabbing them with one hand on the top of their head. Is it a lot? Can it be a lot? Do you need to have fingernails? What's going on?
I mean, if I want to explain it to you in kayfabe, it's that he's been training his hand.
What'd you say?
Kayfabe?
Kayfabe
is.
I thought you said cave mabe. I was like, what is this caveman mentality?
No, in kayfabe is just those of you that don't know, kayfabe is like the dropping the the suspending your disbelief element of wrestling. What's happening in the world of wrestling that isn't the reality, I guess, is the best way to put it. So in kayfabe, I would say that Fritz von Erich trained his hand for decades.
Right.
And he's able to apply.
He goes to the grocery store and he's like,
just crushing watermelon. And he's able to apply a grip to your temples with these two fingers and to the top of your frontal cortex that makes you just, your eyes pop out of your head, basically. The reality of the situation. I remember
one time me and you fake fought wrestling in front of
me fake wrestle a friend while drunk
in front of like our boss at the time, and he got actually very concerned that you had injured me. And he came up to help me, and I was like, "Get away from me!" And then I went back. It was very funny. We did a good job.
Because that's the thing. Wrestlers are very good at faking that they've been injured. That's part of it. It's called selling, right? You want to sell your injury.
Yeah.
People are bad at it, and some people get hit with some people take the Iron Claw, for instance, and just go, nope, and pull the hand off. And that destroys the credibility of the person applying the claw, right? So then to explain why a few minutes later in the movie he gets disqualified for using the Iron Claw, because not only is it like a banned technique, but he was taught by his father to train that hand by crushing watermelon.
Evil. It's like Skeletor.
Exactly.
Yeah. I taught He-Man everything he knows.
Fake He-Man, I'll get you for this.
Before we leave the wedding, I have to throw in line dancing is racist, and we all know it.
Yeah. Just that's ... I
like how Tim went, yeah, yes, it is. Let's never do it again.
So so then they don't have it. So David dies. David's like, I'm fine, I'm going to Japan. And then the next scene is like, your brother's dead. He died in Japan of a rupture.
So like at this point in the movie, when we first saw it, I did not know, like I the foreshadow, him barfing up blood, I'm like, this motherfucker's dead for sure. But like I didn't know if he was doing drugs or like why was he bleeding internally, whatever.
Yeah.
And then him sitting at the table, I'm like, oh fuck, it's gonna be like he OD'd and his his apartment or whatever in Japan. And I was partially correct, which is they're like intestinal rupture. And I'm like, and then I think, doesn't Zac Efron go like, what does that mean? And then it's like, it like cuts to the next scene of them all at a funeral. I'm like, they didn't tell us what it means. I don't need to know what it means, but like at the same time, I want to, like you were saying, Tim, where they're like, it's implied maybe that it could have been drug. Like I wanted to know, but I hadn't seen the full movie at this point. And on second watch, I was like, yeah, they were smart to not start to like have a 7-minute long sequence for where him and his dad talk at the dining room table about like, turns out he was on all sorts of fucking drugs and the curse is real, never do drugs or whatever. So it works because it then goes into this, it's almost a montage because it's very short, little individual moments. It's not like a musical montage where you're piecing together what's happening through music and it's like 5-second snips, but it's like a minute of each character, and it's pretty potent and powerful. And we, like we said earlier, Dad always has some fucking douchey speech up his butt that he can pull out at any moment.
Yeah.
And at this point, he walks out with a fucking cowboy hat. I'm like, when does he wear? He hasn't worn a cowboy movie. He's all of a sudden got his funeral cowboy hat.
Well, he actually had a church cowboy hat towards the beginning of the movie. Yeah.
Right, and it wasn't black though, right? It was like
no, that was his happy hat, not his sad hat.
Right.
But
he makes everybody take their sunglasses off because you're not allowed to hide behind your sunglasses.
Right. There's no hiding and no crying.
And
this
crying.
Was
then he immediately he immediately goes into a speech, another Fritz speech, and even the movie at this point is like, shut the fuck up, Fritz. And it like cuts to the mom, and you can hear the echoing of him like on the porch giving the speech. And the movie is even like, this guy's too much. Like, we can't even sit here and listen to this guy anymore. We've got to go to somebody else and see what they're feeling. And
during this sequence too is that's when I had that moment of Maura Tierney being like, she's destroying this role, because right before they go to the funeral, she's up in her room and Pam comes in and she's like, we gotta go, and she's like struggling to put on her dress and she's crying and she's like, I can't wear this dress again, they're gonna know it's the same dress. And I know that's like whatever.
Carrie's death, I think.
Funeral,
yeah.
That's not.
Is that funeral. Okay? Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
This is her just getting ready, and she's not breaking down. She's just getting ready, and it's a little bit concerning. But you're like, okay, she's trying to be reserved, and she's hearing the speech that Fritz is giving about no tears and everything, and I think she's also listening to it. But like I said, the movie has decided that we've had too much of this guy giving us speeches every time something bad happens. We've got to cut to what she feels, and we're hearing him give the speech, and it's she's absorbing it a little bit. But the second time we don't get that, right? Like the second time that she's dealing with another one of her children's death, which is her third child dying.
At that point,
she's completely removed, and it's all about her, and it is like about her emotions. This first one though is like, it feels like she's trying to do what's best for him again, but we're finally getting away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's such a prick, man. He's such a fucking prick. Anyway,
he tosses a coin to see who the next champion's going to be.
Yeah, which is so like, screwed up.
My golden goose is dead, and the old one there who had it shot, I don't know. And Carrie's back, and he's kind of short. So,
but we also we do get a representation of depression, which I think is like the first one on this show that is actually good since maybe like Secret Window, which is not a great movie, but it is a very good representation of what depression does to somebody.
Yeah.
And this one is it's pretty accurate, man, where like you just become
where he's just in
void
bed.
And you're just you're thinking about everything at the same time, and you can't really process it, and it just cripples you.
And he starts becoming a bit manic too, because so the Carrie Von Erich stuff happens. He wins the title. There's that scene that really haunting scene, because I knew it was coming, where he's just won the belt. He's in the kitchen with Kerry's in the kitchen with the lights turned off. He's got his hand on the NWA title, and Kevin walks in and he's like, "Are you good, man? Like you should be on the top of the world." And he's like, "I can't come down. Like I can't come down. I'm too high off drugs and life and steroids, and I'm
drunk, and now I got to go ride my motorcycle.
Now I'm going to go for a bike ride."
I do have one question for you guys before we move to this next part. I remember when I was a kid, like seeing footage of old wrestling stuff all the time, and so many of them were like broad daylight stadium wrestling matches, and like it would be like daytime, and like Hulk Hogan or like Ric Flair would be coming out, and they'd be like fighting in like an open sky wrestling match,
like an amphitheater scene.
But that doesn't happen anymore. Am I wrong? Like I've never seen that in modern happens. Even for like the last like 25 years, I don't know if I've seen
certain WrestleManias happen in open air arenas.
Right.
They just happen later, so you only get like an hour of it
like
being
nighttime
outside. Tradition in the 70s and 80s, okay, right. Wrestling shows would start at like 3 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So the main event would be going on at like 6 or 7 p.m. So that's why when it was an open air arena, it was always like the main event or the big matches were happening in what seemed like the daytime. When Vince McMahon came in and created pay-per-view and created that whole thing, that it shifted to like Sunday nights at 8 the show would start, right?
Yeah.
So in the summer, sometimes if it's like SummerSlams and WrestleMania specifically are in bigger arenas, so you'll get the like the Sky Dome. If you go back and even watch, I think it's WrestleMania 19, there's the Sky Dome's open and there's daytime stuff happening,
right.
And that's relatively recent. And there was a wrestling event that happened 2 years ago in Ireland, in the castle, the stadium that's like kind of shaped like a castle. Once again, outdoor, had to start earlier for people back in the States because of the time difference. So it does happen, but you're right. In the olden days,
old times before
shows started at like
and
3 or 4
evil took over.
Yeah.
Before pay-per-views,
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
He rock bottomed his way into our hearts. And
I don't think that Dwayne The Rock Johnson is at rock bottom in any way.
No, his move was called the rock bottom.
Oh, I see.
The move that he did.
I know nothing about The Rock other than his like movie career. I don't know any about. I know
Do
that
you
he used
smell
to,
what The Rock is cooking.
I know that he used to ask people if they could smell stuff.
Can you smell this for me, please?
Long COVID. It's like it's 1998. Yeah, you'll know what long COVID is soon enough, Junior. So as soon as he was like, "I'm going for a bike ride," as a motorcycle ride, I was like, "Oh fuck, this audience is about to go silent when they realize what happens."
Mm-hmm.
And during this too, we get that shot of Kevin and his wife at the like, "What's the name of your baby?" And he says like his mom's maiden name.
Hold the phone, man. There's so much that happens in this little brief stint.
Oh yeah, they reveal the one leg before that. I'm sorry,
but even before that, like
this is when I don't take a million notes.
Okay, but I'm talking about filmmaking. I'm not talking about wrestling at this point.
Okay.
I'm talking about like the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
We get the scene of mom watching Kerry on TV as he's winning,
right?
And we see a ghost on the stairs, and obviously it's not meant to be a literal ghost. It's like she is being haunted by her son's death or whatever, and this is her second son to die. She looks behind her, she gets a shiver or whatever, like, but it's not like it's well played, and you get it. You're not.
Yeah, it's understated and it's not overbearing.
Yeah,
and the movie hitting you over the head.
And the movie is so grounded throughout that like something like that you can do, and it's meant to be evocative or provocative, I suppose. Like in terms of like, this is what her mind is at. Like she's watching her son, who's about to become the champion,
Mhm.
but her son, who was supposed to be the champion, is dead, right? Like she's
Guess-
thinking about her other.
I was just going to say she's clearly thinking about
Yeah.
everybody at the same time.
Yeah.
It's also a great moment to kind of like most of the time we just see what the dad and the brothers are up to kind of see her when they're not there, that like when there's not a bunch of guys talking about wrestling or a bunch of guys there practicing wrestling, she's just there watching them wrestle on TV.
And she's just thinking about her. She's thinking about her sons. She's not thinking about what's going to be and like how the championship is not what matters. It's her her kids, man, her little boys.
Yeah.
And while this is happening, he wins the match, and you hear like the new world champion, and then it cuts to, I believe, the tree that he kills himself under at the end of the movie. But there's also another tree beyond it that has this like hanging patch of like wisp to it that it looks like someone's hanging in the tree. And I'm like, oh man, like on second viewing, I was like, this is seriously, if they plan this is crazy. This is wild. It looks like a person hanging themselves from this tree as he's being like the world champion of the world, hanging himself from a tree, Gary Von Butten.
But that scenery of that homestead, that like anywhere Americana look, where it's slowly becoming this haunted, sad place. And it's hard to kind of spell out exactly how that's being accomplished as the movie continues. But
it honestly is just the storytelling that's doing that, because they could show the same shots at the beginning of the movie and you'd be like, isn't that beautiful? But then halfway through showing it paired with, the fact that she's seeing ghosts of her dead kids, it's making you look at it differently, right? It's good. This movie's good, guys. I don't know if you know this. This movie's good.
It's a good movie.
Good movie. So yeah, he we get the reveal that he lost his leg.
Which that got an audible gasp from the
audience.
Theater.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah.
And it was framed so well too, because he gets up, he like snorts a bunch of painkillers because he's clearly been in an accident. We don't know how long it's been. It must have been a month later or whatever. And
no, it's that stump is
later,
healed, baby. That's like 8 to a year. Like that's a long time. Yeah.
It's quite a while, because like, in reality, I think Carrie, he didn't lose his foot initially, and in the healing process, he started stepping on it too soon, and it ended up damaging too much, and then they had to amputate. I think was what actually happened.
On brand for the Von. I keep wanting to say Von Butten. The Von Butten boys always up to no good on their, green limbs.
The Von Erichs, if
they had only named one of their children Erich, it would make it so much easier for me, because I'd be like Erich Von Erich. of the Von Erich brothers. Yeah.
He went and had his most of his career in the WWF without a foot, and he never told anybody. He won the Intercontinental title with.
That's one of the craziest parts about this entire story to me, is that he was wrestling professionally and successfully with one foot for a long time.
When Michael Von, in this next sequence, when Michael Von Erich gets injured, right, and he gets toxic shock syndrome and gets brain damage, they're having that fucking press conference, and he's basically can't even talk, and Kevin's like, yeah, he'll be back in the ring. He'll be back in the ring. It's all good, everybody. Don't you worry.
Not to interrupt, but when we were seeing this in theater, I think when his foot reveal happened and the gasp happened, I think I audibly out loud went, holy shit, just to see what happened, and you both giggled and people giggled around us. They were
a little bit.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Where did his foot go?
Yeah, holy. When did that happen? This is back when drinking and driving was normal.
Perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, you're allowed to do it as long as you're not near a downtown city core where there's people walking around. But yeah, it was shocking. I think everything leading up to it, the fact that they draw it out is perfect, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's called good filmmaking.
called
This movie's
filmmaking.
good. This movie's good.
I mentioned that Kevin, we get that little scene where he's like, we're cursed. So he's like spiraling. Then the whole sequence I mentioned here where Fritz is like, well, I got no more golden geese. What about the skinny music one? He fucking almost dies for that, but then he ends up being like one of the most heartbreaking scenes in a series of heartbreaking scenes is him trying to pick up his guitar and he can't play it, and then he goes to the bathroom and just like pills beer.
Well, we should talk about this a little bit because this is a large chunk, right? Where he's like, they bring him back, they put him up in front of the press. His dad is like scathing in the corner, like staring daggers at him while he's trying to talk, and like you can tell that his dad is like, I don't want to say disgusted, but he's like, he is not pleased with his performance on mic, but it's like he's been brain damaged, man. Like his
and he's like, he's still taking things personally, and he's blaming on a curse, but he's always taking these things as a personal slight against him. That like, this is what I want. This is what I have decided for the family. And every time there's a setback, every time there's this curb to step over, he takes it personally and then overreacts to it and makes dramatic course changes. And
then we also get, we were talking about it earlier, where like a tiny thing can go wrong in a wrestling match, and it can be tragic. There are literally examples that we haven't really talked about on this episode, but like, I think we all remember when, Hart died. When Hart, like, that was just an accident, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that extreme or dramatic. It can just be somebody getting dropped on the wrong way on their neck or and in this case on their shoulder, and they have to get surgery, and it causes some sort of complication, right?
All sorts of near misses in reality of wrestling. Like, I think, what's his name, Mick Foley, the guy who was Cactus Jack.
Yeah,
like, he's had all sorts of near misses.
Well, in 1998, the Undertaker threw him off the top of Hell in a Cell, which is a meme, but is also that happened. And the crazy part about that is, he runs out at the beginning, climbs up. Undertaker didn't know that was going to happen. First of all, he's like, "Oh fuck, I'm 6'9". I have to now climb like a 20-foot cage." So they get up there, they wrestle around a bit. Mick Foley whispers into Undertaker's ear, "Throw me," and Undertaker's like, "What?" And he's like, "Do it." And Mankind, we use Mankind.
Is that the guy who had like a puppet on his hand and like a half bag on his face or whatever? Yeah,
he had like a mask. I went as him for Halloween one year. Anyway, he falls off and like he fell through the table, but usually the tables break or fall a little. He just fucking obliterates the table. When he hit the ground, he broke like 3 of his teeth and they went up out of his nose. So there's a picture of him lying there with like a tooth hanging out of his nose, right? That's not even where it gets crazy. What the fuck? Why is somebody trying to get into the building?
It's Mick Foley calling you. Like, stop talking about me on your podcast.
So they start taking Mick Foley out on a stretcher. Like, that's the end, right? Mick Foley gets off the stretcher, starts climbing the cage again.
He like blows all his teeth out of his nose. Like,
yep. Pretty much. Gets back up to the top where the Undertaker's still up there, like shocked. And then another horrible thing happened. The middle of the cage at the top isn't supposed to fall, okay? But when Undertaker chokeslammed him, he fell through the top of the cage. And then another horrible thing happened. There were chairs up there.
All the other teeth on the other side went out the other nostril. It's like, holy fuck.
There were folding chairs up on top of Hell in a Cell, okay? From the match, like from their hardcore, ridiculous nonsense that was happening. And when he fell through the cage and fell to the ground and hit the mat, a chair came down with him and hit him in the face again, and he survived all of that.
Yeah, like that I think for me that particular match is one that rivals Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, which was one of his last matches.
And you guys know if like a Von Erich was involved in that match,
everybody
he would have like lost all his limbs and like his eyes would have got gouged out. All his hair would have got burned off.
Yeah.
That's so just to put that in perspective, Michael Von Erich takes a body slam and ends up killing himself because he gets brain damage so bad that he's shunned from his family.
So he gets put into the hospital and they're there, and then the doctor comes out and he's like, so the surgery did not go as planned. He got a crazy 200. It was like a 200 fever, which is wild. Like
that like bakes your brain. Yeah.
yeah.
His brain was baked. Yeah.
And then he suffered from toxic shock syndrome, which to me, toxic shock sounds like a heel in a wrestling world. Like, I'm toxic shock and I'm coming for you. But
it's a female wrestler because the implication is that her tampon was in too long. Because you can get toxic shock syndrome from tampons. Okay, I'll goodbye.
Yeah.
But that was something I had to kind of look up myself. Was like, is this a real thing, toxic shock syndrome? And like, it is like a result of a unforeseen bacterial infection that can happen during surgery.
Like blood, yeah, like too much blood, like bad blood inside your body.
Yeah.
Anyway, wrestling is crazy. But he doesn't die, but he, like we said, he goes into a coma, and then when he wakes up, they parade him around, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And you can even tell. I mean, I don't know how it was in reality, but even in the movie, you can tell that Kevin is like, why are we doing this? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's so half invested when he's doing the press conference, and I mean, like, where his patter was garbage before, but now like there's not even any emotion behind what he's saying to everybody, and I guess at that point that's where he started to take a more managerial position with his father's wrestling company.
Tries to teach Carrie how to wrestle again on one leg. He sort of takes the books for the wrestling company at the sportatorium, and we get that before Michael
Smithers. I need to go down to the sportatorium.
Before Michael actually doesn't play his guitar and then offs himself. Yeah. We get that really sweet conversation with Michael and his mom. Yeah. Which was
this is where like he realizes, I think, that like he probably could have been an artist. Yeah. His mom was an artist. His dad was an artist, and they both decided, no, like we're not going to be artists. We have to focus on what matters, which is raising you guys. Or I mean, mom focused on raising you guys, and dad focused on making my children.
Dad was like, if you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, champions of the world. And it's extremely tragic and heartbreaking to realize, like, you know, you don't see this painting, but his mom is talking about like, that's the house I grew up in. I painted that painting. And he's like, why didn't you tell anybody? And she doesn't really have a good reason. And you don't actually get her reason throughout, but I think you can sort of infer it, which is that like, one, nobody ever asked, which is kind of shit, but also like she is a piece of this family and she's not the main piece, you know, like she's there for other reasons. She's not there to inspire. She's there to make breakfast and kiss you on the forehead when you're sick, but she's not there to inspire you to be something else, which is like, oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Like the painting, when they reveal it, is like amazing. Like it's an amazing painting. And you realize that like she could have inspired him to become an artist as well, instead of who is the inspirer of the family, her stupid fucking husband, the cause of the curse. Yeah. Like he's the reason that, you know,
he's suppressing everyone's actual innate abilities. And like it is like, and for those that can associate with this kind of stuff, it is very frustrating where you think like if it wasn't for not that you want this father to be gone, but like just make some different choices, because like these things are impacting others.
But it's not even like he didn't even let him have a chance before two of his children had already died. He was like keeping them in reserve. Like it's like this sort of like the gun cabinet that we get later, where it's like I have this and I can use this one later. If this one doesn't work, I can use this one. And it's like he's treating them like
it's very utilitarian.
Like ammunition, and it's fucking terrible, man.
And then one of the most heartbreaking scenes of the whole movie is just that when they're out searching for Michael, and it's that faraway shot of them like doing that thing where you
the search pattern,
search pattern through a perimeter, and
But it's just the family, which is fucked. It's not even
And
like there's a bunch of cops or anything there. It's like, no, it's just them.
Mm-hmm.
And they find him, and it's just, it never like zooms in. It doesn't show. They just all run to him, and then the scene kind of cuts away.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we get the scene I was talking about earlier about Dottie trying to put on the dress, and Pam's like, "We got to go," and she's like, "I can't wear this again." And we see shots of like Kevin's home life and stuff. Like he can't deal with the kids. He's sleeping in the office.
I think that's a pretty important scene too, though, is when she's burying two of her sons within such a short period of time that she hasn't bought new clothes, and she's looking at the dress and she can't bring herself to put it on because she's like, everyone down there is going to recognize my dress from the last time I buried my son. And like, I don't think that anybody can imagine processing that sort of information. And I don't know if this is real or if this is like just tailored for the movie, but it is something that I think somebody would go through, right? Like,
yeah, because it's very much in the sense that like, and this is what makes part of, in addition of everything else, what makes this such a great movie is what she's talking about with that dress is not what she's it's not what's actually happening. She's in such denial of like, I don't want to go into this situation again so soon is what it is.
Right.
It's not that being seen in this particular dress. She's making it about the dress, but it's not about that. It's about her not accepting the situation happening again for the third time.
100%. And then, if you take it to like a more cinematic level, it's like, she doesn't want to rank her sons in the same way that her husband is ranking them, right? Like, so like, I didn't buy a new outfit for this son. I consider this son to be like, not worthy of me buying a new outfit, meaning that he's lower on the ranking, which is like, the whole movie is just about like
just tragedy.
Dad's shitty ranking system. That's what this movie should have been called.
So
the
luckily,
Iron Claw, Dad's shitty ranking system.
So luckily and unfortunately, the next sequence is Kevin gets his shot at the title again against one Ric Flair.
Oh, who's this guy? He looks like he wears a lot of lizard skin.
Old Lizard Skin Jones.
He looks like I used to.
Yeah, before the plane crash.
Look at that. Look at
that
tights.
cleft chin. It looks like somebody just poked some Play-Doh.
That could operate as a gravy boat, that chin. My goodness.
You do shots out of it. He probably poured a shot in his chin and like a little party trick, whip it back, and longest line, shortest ride.
I wonder, do you have to like, when you wash your face, do you have to like give some extra attention to the
like a Q-tip?
Yeah, Q-tip, yeah.
Q-tipping my chin dimple. And this sequence is great. Okay, so I will reveal how I feel about this. I thought that
I was almost in tears talking about that scene earlier, and now I'm talking about chin dimples.
It's time for levity, Steven.
All right, let's go.
His performance I thought was really good. I think the guy knew the source material. I think that he didn't look like, I know you guys are saying like it doesn't matter that he didn't look like him. I wanted specifically Ric Flair to look like Ric Flair, to be the one big like, I got Harley Race, so I'm happy. And I think that was the problem on the internet. Everybody was expecting this like over the top portrayal of Ric Flair, but it was great. It was as grounded as the rest of the movie is. So that's sort of where I'll leave it on that note. But this part is heartbreaking because they have a knockdown drag out, and the same fucking thing happens except reversed, where Kevin freaks out and puts on the Iron Claw. And that's one of my kind of issues with this movie, where even though they explain kayfabe at the beginning, it still seems like in a match they're really fighting, because obviously that DQ finish was like predetermined with the claw and everything. But he loses by disqualification this time, and the title doesn't change hands. And then when they go to the back, he's sitting there like stewing, and Ric Flair comes to the back like, "Good job, kid! Like you really put it all out there. You did a great job." He's got his hair's all.
It's honestly like
red.
one of my favorite parts of the movie.
It's amazing. It's great.
It contrasts like the mood of Fritz and Carrie were like, what the hell happened out there, and they're like disappointed, and then Ric Flair comes in. He's like, we can do a match anytime.
Let's get a drink after this. And it's like,
he says, "Where can we go to get fucked up? Like, let's get fucked up together right now."
Yeah,
and like,
but it was interesting, like a positive in a weird way, but like somebody positive comes in to kind of give such contrast and show like how fucked up things are with his family.
Yeah,
it's all part of the game, and we're good. We're good.
So like, I'm not like a huge Ric Flair head in the world of wrestling, but like,
yes.
I think from beginning of his intro to end of the scene where he just walks out being like, "All right, well, if you change your mind, just let me know. I'll be at the Holiday Inn." He's just gonna go back to the Holiday Inn and get fucking wasted in the bar of the hotel.
Yeah, and get his short ride ready.
Yeah, exactly. And like everything else is like so intense, just like the entire movie. Everything is so intense, and he comes in and it's like, we just put on the best fucking show that I've maybe ever been a part of.
Yeah,
this is crazy. I can't believe how wild you went. Like let's do this again at any moment. And like you said, Tim, it just like, it shows that like there are people in this industry that are like, no, this is great. Like, this is theater. We're performers. We have a craft, just like Sir Ian McCallany or whatever on the stage, and we're giving it to people. Whenever you want, come back. And he's sitting here stewing in the locker room with his dad, who's like, "You're never gonna be what I need you to be," and his brother, who's like, "I agree." And he's covered in, and then he looks at his hand covered in blood, and he's like, "Fuck this." And he starts laughing, and he's like, I have to go back and get my kids, and I can't be a part of this anymore. And it's good, man. Very good.
Yeah. And this is the bit where Fritz is kind of like, "I want to give you the company," and Kevin talks to that announcer guy, and the announcer's like, "Those books are so fucking cooked from 30 years of just
your dad being insane."
Yeah, your dad being insane, man. Like, nobody ever got paid. There was no money, but he made it look like we were the biggest biz. And then he has that talk with his dad that's like, "I know you cooked the books. I need to sell this so my family can thrive instead of just being in the same bullshit you've been putting us through. I'm not doing that to my kids." Ironically, those kids do wrestle now. It's a bit better. It's better, I assume. It's probably did everything different than his dad did. But the mentality here is like, I don't want to bring my kids into that world. So, things get a bit better for a minute until that Christmas where Carrie shows up brandishing a weapon, brandishing a gun.
He's not brandishing it. He gives it to him in a box.
It's true. But he's like, "Let's go shoot it."
Yeah. Is that a thing? Like, I don't know a lot about guns, but like, is that a traditional thing where if you give a gun to somebody as a gift, you're meant to go?
If you're in Texas, probably, maybe
right away.
Maybe, yeah. I've never lived in a household with a gun. So like the idea
in Canada, right?
Yeah. So it's a little different for what I experience in many others.
Yeah, what about these guns?
Bam. But that most certainly, if someone gave a gun at Christmas, that would give alarm in my household. And then if someone said, "Let's go shoot it," it'd be like, maybe after dinner.
You're like in a suburb in Ontario. You're like, I don't think
because
so.
In one of the establishing shots at the very beginning of the movie, those shots of just the house, they show the gun, Fritz's gun rack, and he's got like 30 guns. So obviously he's a gun collector, so that wasn't weird. The mom Carrie's like, "Let me give you your gift now," and the mom's like, "It's Christmas. Let's wait till Christmas." And he's like, "I want to give him the gun now." That was a little weird. That was a little off-putting.
Well, it's because
Yeah.
he wasn't going to be there on Christmas.
Yeah,
So
because he's
like,
going
"I
to go
gotta
win
give
the
you gun."
Intercontinental title.
Yeah.
No, because he has to go to Mexico to decompress or whatever he said.
Yeah.
We're leaving on Christmas Day to go to Mexico because I need a break or whatever. And like he gives it to him, and his dad pulls it out, and he's like, "Wow, it's beautiful."
Very nice gun.
And I'm always like,
You better not kill
anybody
yourself
who
with it.
describes a gun as beautiful as a weird pervert. But
Yeah.
also like, you know, whatever. I guess if your dad likes guns, you get him a gun. And then he's like, "Let's go shoot it." And he's like, "No, not happening. Not happening right now."
Yeah.
And he freaks out. He's like, "What the fuck? What the fuck? You gotta fucking shoot him right now." And then his mom is like, "What's wrong with you, Karen?" He's like, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with him? He doesn't want to shoot the gun I just gave him."
Yeah. Like clearly, like he's showing signs of his substance abuse and his stress and his manias. And
that's the point of it, right? Is he's meant to seem unhinged. Even the T-shirt he's wearing is like, that's not a Christmas T-shirt. That's a summertime T-shirt, man. What are you doing?
I wear sleeveless tees at Christmas all the time.
Wear a sleeveless knitted sweater, at least, at the very least.
Another point of it that was like, I don't know if it was necessary characterization, because in real life, Carrie had at least, I think, 2 kids at that point. And I'm not too sure if he was still married or not, but it kind of just brings a random lady that they hadn't met yet, and it was just kind of like some person that he met on the road or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure if
wrestlers he was like separated from his wife and kids or something, and like that still could have been accurate to the time, but like, again, I don't know. I think it's meant to
Mexico.
I think what it does is, in the scene preceding, shows the unhinged nature where, you know, they're like, "What about Clarice," or whatever the fuck her name was, and like he's like, "What? Who?" And he's like, "Clarice, the girl you brought to Christmas," and he's like, "I don't even remember that was that her name." Like, he doesn't.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Removed from everything that he can't even remember the name of the person he brought to Christmas.
Well, even after the Christmas meltdown, Kevin meets Carrie in the kitchen to say like, "Hey, you doing okay?" He's like, yeah. Why? He's like, "Because you just had a shouting match over a gun a moment ago."
Clearly on cocaine.
With mom and dad at the same time. Yeah,
you were very visibly on cocaine right now.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Let me get a look at you." Like they all say, that's what their like whole thing is, like, "Let me get a look at you," and then they say, "You look strong," and it's like, Jesus Christ. And then he headbutts him to get him to stop looking at him. Stop looking at me.
And then I don't know if it's later. I assume he's calling from Mexico, and he kind of gives the call to be like, "I don't want to live no more. I can't do it. I'm too stressed out."
From
the hotel
street or whatever. Like he goes.
Oh, that was like later that night. Okay.
Yeah. No. I think this is like meant to be
after Christmas,
on like months later.
Oh, like months later. Because they do show him. They do show like a TV of him winning the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be after SummerSlam 1990.
Yeah, the SummerSlam is when Zac Efron is like, "I'm thinking about selling the business or whatever," and then his dad's like, "If you sell the business, you're not welcome through this door again. Just so you know. This is how I talk. I break up my sentences like this to make sure that you understand the important parts are important."
I called the angry Shatner.
People who talk to me like that don't talk to me again.
That's how I read my narrations, and I like it.
So basically, very sad. Kevin is like, "Oh shit, I have to get to the house." And even though the parents are around, Carrie still makes it to the tree with a gun. And as Kevin walks up, he sees the car with the door open. He hears a bang, and then
I mean, I'm sure it didn't happen that way in real life, but like it is
very cinematic. But yeah, it was.
In terms of the narrative of this movie, I assume that he would be sitting by that tree just waiting for someone to come up, and no one did. Like he got to his parents' house. His dad is working on whatever fences for non-existent horses or whatever the fuck. Like what the, like, you know, they're like he's constantly getting to build fences and like you never see one piece of livestock on this fucking ranch.
Oh yeah,
you know?
when they're moving fences around at the start of the movie. Yeah.
And he's barking at Mike at the beginning.
And you like I don't know, like I assume if you're sitting there with a gun planning to kill yourself and you've gone to a place where you assume someone would come to help you stop you from doing that and no one does, it's probably a very devastating feeling, like just waiting, like is anyone gonna come help me? And then you see the one person that you know probably could stop you, but you want the people who really probably couldn't stop you. Like, that dad and mom are not going to be able to stop me from doing this, but Kevin is the one that could. Yeah. And I get it, man. I understand it. It makes sense to me. Like you would be like, no, because he's gonna get me to stop, and I don't want to stop. So that's why he would pull the trigger when he sees his brother coming out.
Right. So
and he reached out to Kevin first through the phone, and that kind of cascading from there. Yeah. Like it's a very visible series of events that like is just all too real for sadly too many people. But it's like that punctuating moment of it though is like where we talked about this homestead is slowly becoming this haunted place, and like this is kind of where it's come to a head. That like from here on in, that's it. That this place is a absolutely broken home. No coming back.
It's very heartbreaking when he carries them in and puts them on the kitchen table too, or the dining room table. Like that part got me again today. And right before that, Fritz walks over. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" Rah, 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 rah. And Kevin's like, "Well, you do not understand the magnitude of the situation,
the Magneto of what you've done here."
And he fucking uses his Magneto powers to pull the iron out of his blood. It's crazy.
He pulled the iron right out of his claws.
He tries to strangle him to death in a very intense scene.
I mean, if he didn't stop, he would have.
He would have.
Yeah. And but it's also kind of representative of like finally someone has overpowered the dad. That like he's been kind of dethroned
the final
at that moment.
Battle.
Yeah, that like there's even when he was confronting his dad before about cooking the books, it was very timid.
I did what I need to,
and he was like, "But Dad, I know it's not quite." He wasn't even being like too accusatory about it. He was still like kind of approaching this in a very open and somewhat forgiving manner. That like, this is what we've got to do. Yeah,
I added everything up. It doesn't make sense. I didn't make nearly as much money as you said I did. And then he says, "What do you think? All of this was a free ride?" And he like looks around at the house, and like you realize like, oh, he was taking all these earnings and like, and again cooking the books, but he was like building a life around them, and like he was taking money from his kids, and it's like that's fucking wild. Like it is wild. And he has absolutely no regrets about it. Like
because it's all about him, and he sees nothing wrong with it. And so then when Kevin overpowers him, and it's just this rage-filled moment, and he sees his father, like, finally on the ground, finally pushed down and in a weak and vulnerable state. That's when he's like it's all changed now. The relationship is completely different now.
And we never get another dad speech after that. Like it's like he choked the speeches right out of his ass.
We get right after this, we get the scene of all the boys reuniting in heaven, which is just sort of a nice little, you can leave kind of happy. In wrestling, the face like typically wins.
Hold on. We cannot skip over the heaven scene.
I'm not skipping over it. I'm talking about it.
Okay.
In professional wrestling, not at like the big on TV shows, at house shows, the untelevised shows, they want to send the crowd home happy. So the heel is vanquished, and then the face will give a speech, and that's what this ending reminds me of. We get to see a very nice moment with the boys reuniting in heaven, right? And then we get some more sadness with Kevin, which we'll talk about in a sec, and then some more levity when you realize that the lineage will go on, it'll be better. But what did you want to say about the heaven?
Well, All I wanted to say is that this sequence in a movie is something that like 99% of the time should never ever work at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Jar Jar Binks shows up as a Force ghost.
Yeah, like it's stupid, it's dumb. Like a lot of people will roll their eyes, and like as it started, like when he comes out and his both his feet are there and he's jumping around on his 2 feet, I was like, oh my god, are we getting a heaven sequence right now? And I had like prepped my brain to be like, this is not happening. Like this is going to be so stupid. And then I realized as it was going, like, oh, this is extremely quaint and nice, and it's not meant to be literal. It's meant to be, like, they talk about God the entire fucking movie. These people clearly believe in God. This is just, Kevin's interpretation of what would happen if his brother died.
Mm-hmm.
He would go meet his other brothers on a dock, and then they would meet little baby brother.
Just so we can use this. Happening inside of his head while Kevin's sitting watching.
Keeps cutting back to him, and I don't know if it keeps cutting back to him, but like
not until the very end of it. Yeah,
not
puts him
until
down, and then this moment happens. It's absolutely wonderful. Like it's beautiful, and it's like all the good parts of these characters that you've seen throughout the movies, the way they interact with each other, and like there's, I don't know if one of the parents had died, would they be there? I don't know, because like these characters only really give a shit, or not even give a shit, just love their brothers. Like they love their brothers so fucking much. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. How did you guys feel about this? Like, I thought it worked really, really well, considering it's something that should never work in any movie, but it worked.
The same series of thoughts that you did. I was like, oh no, is it going to be? But then it was just like sweet because like the brother that died when he was 5 is also there, So the whole movie has been.
That's the moment where I was like, this isn't supposed to work. Why am I liking this?
Exactly?
Why am I liking that the little kid who's like, you must be my little bro, and then you realize, oh, it's Zac Efron.
The brothers palled around so much during the whole movie that, of course, this makes sense in that context. If they didn't show all those scenes of them just like doing stuff together, and then they're like, "I'll see you when you get there," plays while like these guys are like, ding, 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 ding. Like that would be lame. But it was just very like it was only 3 minutes. It just shows them all reuniting next to like the little brook that they all went in.
It's clearly very obvious that it's Zac Efron Imagine.
Yeah.
Like
this is the happiest place I can think of for my brothers that I love so much. And you're right that like it's that same dock from when they were doing that river rafting moment together. So like this is clearly a place that we like to bond at, and so and you're kind of right, Steve, that like if the parents died, would they've been there? But like this is specifically, they didn't reunite in the heaven version of their home. They reunited in the heaven version of the dock, of that little field
of Kevin. Like that's Kevin's.
That's Kevin's vision of it.
He shared that dock with all of them, right? Like he did.
Yeah.
Even the one that died before all the other ones met him, right? Like
the
oldest brother died before any of them could have met him. Yeah.
Yeah, and they make a point where Carrie's like, so like, oh, you're my older brother. Okay.
Yeah, like that is a thing that like in most scenario, like a Star Wars scenario, you'd be like, holy fuck, get the fuck out of here. Where's Count Dooku already? Let me see Count Dooku again. I think the word as to why this works is because it's subtly tasteful, because it's not overbearing. They're not trying to inform you of how to feel about this with music too much. I think it's actually very quiet, and you're just hearing nature sounds, and they're just doing little punctuated things of like, it's not just that they're in heaven, but like he's got his foot back, and the fact that it does end where it's directly shot of Kevin, where it's just like, oh, okay, it's not literally a heaven scene, but this is what we all want for them. And so I think because it's that, and it's not completely spelled out, and it's left for a little bit of interpretation, but it's not overbearing. I think that's why it works so well. And like in the hands of anybody else,
like it would be like oh boy, now we're going to see Station from Bogus Journey in a moment.
It would have been like the end of Big Fish.
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
he's like running through everyone's lives, being like, "Remember when this happened? Remember this?" But
yeah, like
also,
less
Big
is
Fish
more.
good. The end of Big Fish is good. I like the end of Big Fish. I'm not gonna.
And it lives up for Big Fish, but this is a movie where like for something like this, where as you're saying, Jason, where when you're trying to cap off a home show with giving a winning face to all of this after all this tragedy, for all this struggle, this is the winning face for it is seeing peace and happiness for these brothers that are together with each other, which appropriately leads into what comes next for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's just like the next scene, he gets to finally have the speech, and the speech is just about love and peace and, be good to your brother. And I used to be a brother, now I'm just by myself, but now that I have you, I can see that, you get to have a different life. And then that's the end of the movie. And it's just,
and also the mom, the dad comes back in, Fritz comes back in, he's like, well, what's for dinner?
It's the world champion. She goes and she beats Ric Flair for the belt.
Yeah. Right this.
I think that the scene with him and his boys is where he just goes he goes and sits down and watches them play, and he just starts to cry.
Yeah, missing his brothers.
You've already you've put yourself through that, and obviously this is like months, maybe even like a year later again, where he's dealt with that. But I mean, the heaven thing is him dealing with it all, where he's like, they're all together now. I don't have to worry about any of my brothers anymore. They're all gone except for me. The only person that I need to worry about is me, my wife, and my children. And he sits down and he just watches his kids playing, and he just starts to fucking cry. And it's like, you, having just watched the Iron Claw the movie, are like, oh god, this is fucked. This is so fucked up. Why are you making me watch this, Iron Claw? And you start to get upset. But then his children come to him and are like, why are you crying? And he's like, I'm crying because I used to be a brother and I'm not anymore, and it makes me really sad. And they're like, it's okay, Dad.
You cry all the time.
We cry all the time. And it's like, you know what? You guys are right. And he, this is sort of like, just show this to a fucking boomer already. Don't worry about crying. Like, crying is like a thing that people need to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's really quite fucking moving and beautiful, man. The end of this movie this is the reason why when Jason, you're like, that was all right, and I was like, yeah, oh god, it was all right, wasn't it?
It affected me a lot more the second time. I'll say that much about it.
You were still mad about Ric Flair's nose, and
I wasn't mad about Ric Flair. I was defending Ric Flair walking out because I had been poisoned by the internet going in. People were like, it sucks. If Ric Flair sucks in it, and I was like, no, it was a good depiction of Ric Flair.
Emotions that you feel when you watch something like this.
So with that,
oh no, we have to still hold on. The scene that Tim you brought up, where the dad sits down, Fritz sits down, and he says, "What's for dinner?" And she's just painting.
And she's, I don't know,
right?
Because I don't know, and it's like this moment where you know what is to come with these two without them ever having to like infer it or give it to you. It's just there. Like, she's like, I'm gonna paint, and you can maybe make some fucking chicken nuggets, you blockhead.
They split up at some point in real life, and probably that's what that was
implying, that like that there's a rift between them now. His authority over everyone is gone. I mean, mostly because most of the people are gone, but
there's also like a distance in that frame. Like, she's, and you don't get to see what she's painting. Like, I assume it's fucking beautiful. God damn. This movie's good. Guys, I don't know if I said it enough times during this review.
I do recall mentioning something about it.
We don't really do good movies on this podcast very often.
Not
So
very often. Sometimes it's shocking. That's why we went. We're at 3:15 right now. Let's do
not since Castaway have we done a movie this good.
Let's do a little bit of let's talk about our Home Alone of it all.
Oh God.
Mine's very quick. Let's be very quick about these last few things.
If you had to pick one,
what do you think the Home Alone of it
is
all?
the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone?
I really
got to know. When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all? Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
When is the Iron Claw of it all?
Of it all. What's the Iron Claw of it all? That's every time Fritz is on screen. I just want to say very quickly. I know the guest is supposed to go first, but mine's so simple. It's the wrestling matches. I just wanted to see how they depicted the wrestling part. Obviously, I got a lot more than that out of it, but it's the wrestling matches for me. And Tim, why don't you go next?
This being like the immediate reason why, I mean, beyond you just inviting me out, but the big reason why I was like, okay, yeah, for sure, let's see this movie, was just knowing that it was an A24 film, even though I don't want to necessarily operate by default for these kind of things, but seldom do they disappoint when their productions are involved. And
what about The Whale? No, just kidding.
I haven't seen The Whale yet, but
The Whale.
But and this one did not disappoint in that regard at all. And so when you're looking at the trailer for it, and and like
when you still fucking botched it,
I was trying to like make it so that Tim was talking. Like,
no worries. So as far as like the Home Alone of it all for this, as far as that's concerned, is just in the trailer, just seeing like how gorgeous it all looked. And so when the movie first starts and you do see it in black and white, and right away you're seeing deliberate choices, I kind of was in the zone for the whole time. And the pacing kind of made it feel very congealed and solid in that sense. So as far as what in particular, I think everyone can kind of get their own thing more or less, but for me, I kind of view it all as the one thing, that this one grand saga to tell of this very, very sad real story.
Fantastic. Steve, Home Alone of it all.
I think for me, the Home Alone of it all would have to be the fact that I didn't know anything about the Von
Erichs.
the Von Erichs.
The Von Burens of it all.
The Von Erichs. And going in, waiting for, like the moment where I was like, I understand who they are. And I don't think that I fully understood that, because, like trailer moments you can get from stuff that you are excited for. But like for this, I didn't really understand what I was going into. It's, a biopic that spans many decades. And I think for me, it's the coin toss when his dad decides to base their future on a coin toss, even though he's kind of like already forged their futures for them. And
the ball starts snowballing out of control.
Yeah, where he literally flicks it and it goes into like a black and white, not a black and white, but like a coin on like a black background, the coin flipping. I'm like, this is when the movie is gonna start to, we've already had one death, but that's when it kind of, the curse comes alive.
Well, in Home Alone, interestingly enough, Home Alone, Kevin like does thwart them like once briefly, right? I feel like before they actually come to the house. In Home Alone 2,
yeah, he throws a bunch of coins, and then Harvey Dent is like, and like falls up.
In Home Alone, when Harvey Dent shows up,
happens in Home Alone 2.
Tommy Lee Jones, Harvey Dent fights Kevin McCallister.
Do we want to play the hit game show that's sweeping the nation?
I would want nothing else.
What's it called again? I can't remember.
It's the game, the MPAA.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
Hello and welcome to Guess the MPAA Game. It's me, Kevin, Zac Efron, Von Buren, and McAllister, and I'm here to tell you the rules. The rules are simple. The MPAA certificate rating is the number that's given to every movie on this game show. You will guess that number. The first 2 digits I will give you. You just have to guess the 3 digits after that in a 5-digit number. This week, the number starts with 5-4-10. What is the MPAA rating?
That's me. 5-5-5.
Higher. Steven.
I'm going to go with 8-8-8.
54888 is incorrect. Lower. Tim.
666.
It is not 54666. Steven, final guess. What is lower? What's the MPAA certificate number?
Oh my god. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go. Dun, 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 dun.
That is incorrect. Play some sort of fart noise. Chucky laugh.
Is Chucky laughing at his own fart in that one?
The MP. You gotta play the final sting.
The MPAA, everyone. The MPAA.
Everybody say it.
Wow.
And finally, it is time for our final thoughts. This is the world's longest episode, but I'm okay with it.
It's time for our final thoughts.
I found this feather sticking out of my pants, so
That's my final thought.
my final thought. Just like at the beginning, of course, the guest goes first. So Tim, tell us your final thoughts and give us a rating, whether it be a 5 out of 10 or out of a million or a funny rating. Give her hell, bud, and give yourself the iron claw.
Okay. Not a perfect film. We talked about a couple of little things here and there, but still a tremendous movie. And the fact that like they had to withhold on like they had to remove an entire missing brother from this movie because it was too much sadness, too much to tell. That like that kind of gives you an idea that like it's almost an overwhelming story. But it encapsulates a very interesting time, not just for wrestling, but for entertainment in general, where that kind of the superb operatic drama that was being accompanied by all this. But it's funny that the background, the reality for all these people is sometimes even more of a tragedy than what they're portraying on stage is kind of far out. And the fact that this is like an early into this person's film directing career for Timothy, I think it goes by Sean Durkin, but his full name's Timothy Sean Durkin, so I don't hold that against him. But it's, I said that like it's like such a fully realized story that like usually when you see directors in their early career, you can see raw talent. Like when we were talking about Assault on Precinct 13, there's like raw talent for Carpenter there, but still needs to be refined. Whereas there's a lot here that's already refined, which is shocking, but in a very pleasing manner. And as I mentioned, that the pacing for this the whole way through is makes it just very easy to absorb such a massively dramatic story like this. And on top of it all, I was a little ready to kind of write off Zac Efron for any kind of dramatic acting, and he managed to do it for this. Now, whether or not he had to get as ultra super jacked for this as he did, that's a personal choice. But I think we were saying to each other after leaving the theater, sometimes getting into that kind of physical condition can have a bit of an after effect for the rest of your life and how you physically can do things. So hopefully the best for him with all that, but still did a great job. And the fact that they made a point to say that Kevin, almost said Van Buren, Kevin Van Erich, in real life is a 6'2" person. Meanwhile, Zac Efron's 5'8" or something like that. So it was just kind of obvious that okay, he's not quite the real life person. That was one element that actually did kind of take me out of the movie a little bit. But all that being said, everything was otherwise fairly seamless and well connected. And in spite of all the tragedy, the moments of levity actually were actually very charming. And seeing these people interact without the dad being there and being actually nice to each other was remarkably charming. For those that have either had a lot of exposure to or not any exposure to the ideas of elements of toxic masculinity or generational trauma, this is a good movie that highlights a lot of those things without being overbearing. And I feel accomplished it very, very well and tastefully. So with all that serious stuff aside, I guess I give it a Bruiser Brody out of Bruiser Brody. But no, go see it. And wrestling fan or no, go see it. And I hope you enjoy it.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
Thank you. You're all too kind. Please.
And a very appropriate Undertaker dong.
Okay. The instrument, not a dong. Okay.
Oh, no.
Please show us the Undertaker.
The Undertaker's dong. Everyone on screen now.
Undertaker penis.
The Undertaker's dong. Oh, geez.
That's
So
what it
much
was
lizard skin.
Yep, it's a picture of the Undertaker's penis. Steve, what are your final thoughts for the film The Iron Claw?
I must say that this is a well-constructed movie from beginning to end. From the opening that brings you back to movies that are about pure athleticism, Scorsese-esque notes from the start, to just the building blocks of sport movies. And then you go into the biopic stuff. It's formulaic in a way that works. I don't know if you guys watch a lot of movies that fully go into the characterization of athletes, but usually it's a little bit hollow, and it felt full to me. It may have been because of the fact that it was so full of characters, from both parents to all 4 of the brothers in this movie. Wait, was there 5? I don't remember.
5, yeah.
So many. And then there was a 6th that wasn't even in it. Holy shit. It's a lot of brothers. I think that this movie it does a lot in making you kind of feel something for something that otherwise you might not actually have any interest in whatsoever. Boxing movies and basketball movies, baseball movies, all sporting movies, they have that sort of hurdle that they have to make. And this did it without even really needing much other than pairing their montages of fights with just montages of things happening. I'm kind of I'm a little bit overwhelmed with it. I don't know how to land on a solid rating that's funny or entertaining. I just think that this is a really good movie, and I recommend everybody go see it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But if you don't like it and you're near me, I'm going to give you the fucking iron claw right on the top of your freaking eyeballs, right above your eyeballs. And I'm going to make it bleed. I'm going to make it painful and it's going to hurt. All right? All right?
Consider yourselves warned.
All right.
Thank you, Undertaker Dong. I had a system. It's cool. So I guess with that, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to read my review from the night I watched the movie. And I'm going to preface this by saying my opinion has changed after I was able to think about it for a few months. And my rating has actually changed. My number rating has actually changed by a full.
It's going to start like, it was a dark and stormy
By a
night.
full point.
And the iron claw was scraping at my door.
Quote the Raven, nevermore. It's a well-made A24 film. That much is true. To get the most of the impact, though, I suggest not looking up anything about the family beforehand, and it helps to not be an expert about wrestling. The wrestling element swings wildly between spoon-feeding terminology and putting in things for people in the know, but sways more towards a general audience. They messed up some pretty big elements, like Kerry Von Erich's height and omitting a brother completely. I also think Zac Efron took the muscle gain way too far. I should feel lucky, I guess, that they even took this level of care with a wrestling film, but I think The Wrestler is the better film, which we're going to find out this month if it is or it isn't. I don't think that it is. We talked passionately about this movie for 3.5.
Are they in a competition? Is there a competition we didn't know? Is it scheduled for one fall?
It's scheduled for one fall. Introducing first, me telling you my rating of the film the day I watched it. 3.6 out of 5. No, incorrect. It's a 4.5 easily. I didn't realize that I would be so affected by it watching it a second time when I was able to move all the bullshit out of my head and objectively watch it as the amazing masterpiece that it is. And I give this movie, Zac Efron looked like a pumpkin.
Oh, rude.
He had an accident. He fell.
It's true.
He fell down.
It's true. They really went more.
Bed.
They really went more for make him look like his own father in this versus make him look like
head on top of a cube head or
exactly. But yeah, that's my rating. Just to add to that, I think that cinematography wise, it's phenomenal. I watched it in ultra high definition on a good TV, so it might have even looked better than in theater because it wasn't projected. It's a masterpiece. The acting is amazing. The score is amazing. The stuff you were connecting about paying homage to like Raging Bull and old sports flicks and old gladiator flicks. Amazing. I think that I want to, whatever this guy's Timothy Sean Chalamet or whatever his name is. I want to see
Sean
Durkin. I want to see whatever his next thing is. I will see that. And that's my review. That's my final thought.
Good. We're all clapping. We're all wondering where the claps
are. And Tim, just before we get out of here and before I do my rigmarole at the end, do you have anything that you want to plug?
just the Undertaker's dong, I guess. But at the moment, the only thing I have to plug is the dimple on Ric Flair's chin, but that's about it at the moment.
With a cork.
With a cork and a hammer.
Actually, not a dimple; it's an inverted nipple.
And you can suck milk out of that.
Oh my god!
And he goes, "Oh!"
Canceled. You're all canceled. Canceled.
Chin nipple.
We are, of course, I want to plug this show. You can find us on all social media. I said at the beginning, we're very active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we are on Twitch and YouTube right now, live every week at 8 p.m. On Thursday. You can find us at youtube.com/hey did you see this one, pretty much there everywhere else. Please like and follow us. We had our highest consistent viewership tonight, which I think is pretty exciting, for over 3 hours, which is amazing. That's kind of what we do here. We are the long form podcast of the United Federation of Podcasts, which is, of course, a podcast network that encompasses many podcasts that cover all sorts of different stuff. There's the Live Long. I'm going to get the pictures for this for next week. We'll figure it out. There's the Live Long and podcast about Star Trek, trivial debates. Each month or bi-monthly, they pick a topic.
I found it. It's right here.
3 people leave in. Oh, was it Ric Flair again? 3 people debate a subject, and another guest sort of judges it. The X-rated and the X-Men animated podcast, X-Men 97, is now airing. They are live each and every week talking about that show. There's Hold Up, a movie podcast, sort of our sister podcast, where they cover 3 movies in 2 hours, and we cover 1 movie in 5 hours.
6 if I have my way.
This podcast is doing a 10-hour streamathon soon. Look, check your local Facebook. Emon on Track, which is a music podcast I haven't had the privy of listening to yet, but it sounds interesting. I'm going to try to get on that. I'm going to talk about some Mars Volta if I can. The Super Maiden Brothers podcast, which is right now they're doing the Survivor coverage, and the Graphic Histories podcast, which is a comic book graphic novel podcast. I think that's everything. I have covered everything. So now do our outro song. Thanks for watching, and then the United Federation sting, and I will close this cocksucker down.
Okay.
It's me, Zac Efron's chin, and it's me, Ric Flair's chin. We're both chins, and we're putting each other in each other's chins.
Oh man, I never thought about the fact that both those chins could make one super chin.
Like a suction cup sound as they break apart.
They're fighting. They're fighting. They're fighting. Oh God.
Fucking?
Are they fucking? God damn. Holy hell. He just gave him a giant chin slam and